Hello everyone. Welcome to Agency Growth Day. Thank you for joining us, and it's great to have you with us. We're going to start in just a few minutes, but meanwhile, as everyone is joining, I will ask you to find our chat and drop us some line. Just say hi, where are you joining us from, or how is your day so far, so that we know that you're here and see us well, and you are ready to, join our event. So waiting for your comments in chat. Oh, hello from Paris. Nice. Hi. Anyone else joined? Let's see who we have today. Hello from Italy. Wow, we have a worldwide audience today. That's so pleasant. Great. So I assume that we have Chicago here as well. Nice. Toronto, Japan. Great. Very glad to see you guys. And thanks for joining. I know that we have time difference with you, but I think that we are all set to hear all the insights that you are going to share today. So glad to be starting. So again, welcome to Agency Growth Day. It's our second event of this kind, and it is aimed to empower agencies with knowledge and insights for your successful growth. First of all, let me quickly introduce myself. I am your host for today, Helena Kuzmovic, Product Marketing Manager at SE Ranking, making sure every day that we deliver the best product experience for you and effectively address your challenges with our product features. And of course, today I will be excited to guide you through the hot topics in our agenda. But before we continue with the topics, I will quickly remind you that we are hosting this event due to SE Ranking as SEO toolkit for agency and in-house professionals. We are proud to be recognized worldwide and get recognition by our users for the best performance and the tool set. So we know that we are moving in the right direction. And speaking about high standards, we are the specialized tool for every SEO task, and by every task I mean it. So we have a complete SEO toolkit with more than 30 tools inside to cover everything from keyword research or competitive research to deep backlink profile and more. Of course, we know how accurate data is important for you. That is why we rely on our AI-powered algorithms and unique data sets to provide you with the most accurate data possible. And team efficiency is a top priority for us. So we provide you with collaborative features for your teams to efficiently work together on your SEO tasks. SE Ranking is trusted by more than 40,000 companies worldwide. So if you're not one of them yet, we're waiting for you. You will be in a good company. And just a quick reminder that we have a very cool plan for today. We will have 5 top industry experts who will cover 5 top and hot topics for you today, all around the insights to provide you with the best knowledge for agency growth. Before we start with our first session, I would like to remind you that the event is recorded and you will get all the materials necessary for you. So just feel free to relax and enjoy the event right now, and we will get you covered afterwards. And the first session is ChatGPT and SEO, enhancing content quality and relevance. And I have to introduce our first speaker, Jonjo Rowlands, who is head of SEO at Boxshell Digital Marketing. Jonjo, welcome. Great having you today. Please introduce yourself, and the stage is yours.
Hi, yeah, so my name is Jonjo. I am head of SEO at Box Chili, digital marketing agency. We look after clients all over the world, primarily in the UK. And we are primarily an SEO agency, but we are a full service agency and we look after PPC, etc., etc. I use ChatGPT every day, and it can be kind of a controversial topic, and there's lots of different ways and right ways and wrong ways to use it that we're going to go through today. And so if I share my screen now, I believe you can see that.
Yes, we can see it.
Ready? So here we are. So yes, like I say, my name is Jonjo. I'm going to be talking about ChatGPT in SEO with a focus on enhancing content quality and relevance. Tiny little bit about me. You don't want too much. I'm head of SEO at Box Chili, like I said, and I lead a team of account managers and SEOs, and we look after a wide range of clients in verticals across the UK and internationally. And we're talking about AI today, which can be something of a controversial subject, especially in SEO. So I want to start with a disclaimer. It's always been a divisive subject, and even more so since the Google update last month. A lot of the hot takes that you see on LinkedIn and YouTube have been pretty wild. So I want to start by telling you what this session is not going to be. I certainly don't have the 1 giga prompt to rule them all, or some bizarre magic way to publish 2,000 articles in 1 click, or indeed any of the other too good to be true clickbait hot takes that you may have seen over the last year or so. So what's the difference between how these guys are using AI and how we are going to use AI? Well, the key distinction for me is this, and we'll keep coming back to this. I don't want you to think of it as creating AI content. Instead, think of it as using AI as just one of the tools in your arsenal to help you create great content. And we're going to learn how to do that today. Why am I making this distinction, and why do we need to seriously think about this? Well, to understand it, I think we need to look at the last 12 months in the world of SEO. So when ChatGPT came on the scene, there were basically 2 tribes in the world of SEO. There were what I call the AI enthusiasts, and then there were the AI skeptics, with the extremes on one side creating entirely AI generated websites with automated content, and the extremes on the other side were avoiding AI altogether because they were saying it was against Google's guidelines. But the question is, who was more right? Well, in February 2023, Google published their updated guidance on AI generated content, and it goes into some detail, but the most important line is this: rewarding high quality content however it is produced. And this is a rare case of Google saying in no uncertain terms that AI does not go against its guidelines. It doesn't violate its policies. So it kind of seems like the AI enthusiasts were at least somewhat vindicated. And to be fair, the data kind of agreed. Sites that were entirely made up of AI generated content began to drive significant volumes of traffic. And everyone could see that the content was kind of questionable quality, but nonetheless, it was clearly working. And there was a pretty compelling argument that brands should just embrace this, or they would lose out. Then the March update happened, and these sites were suddenly being de-indexed overnight. But we know that AI isn't against the guidelines. So why did this happen? And of course, the answer should be pretty obvious. The sites that were hit were ignoring the high quality part of Google's guidelines. The sites initially ranked because Google took a while to catch up. And to be fair, every platform was scrambling because of how quickly AI grew. But eventually catch up it did. And we're seeing the same reactions on all digital platforms. So Amazon, for example, are tackling AI material, and they've implemented restrictions on the authors and the upload process. And it asked whether AI tools were used in the creation of any of the content. The bad thing is it's very easy to game. And I know this because I have done it. This is my first self-published novel written entirely by ChatGPT. I haven't read a single word of it, and I'm sure it barely makes sense. So when you upload it and it asks whether you used AI to create the content, you just click no, and it goes straight through and nobody checks. And obviously I've just done this to prove a point about how easy it is to churn out AI content, but I would argue that this is the dystopia that we're working towards if we don't start rehumanizing our content. And so obviously I've painted quite a negative view of AI content through these examples, but the fact is that there are countless examples of positive implementations of AI, and they are good for the creator, the SEO creator, and they are good for the intended audience as well. And those are the ones that we're interested in. So the important takeaway is that AI content is not inherently against Google's guidelines, but bad spammy content definitely is. So today we're going to learn how to ensure your AI content is good. I want to briefly go over how large language models work. And this will be a high-level overview rather than an in-depth guide, but it's enough to give you kind of understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of ChatGPT, which is really useful to know. And I would encourage you to do some further reading on this subject because it's really interesting. So way before we get to any of the fun stuff, the AI tool needs to be trained, and large language models like ChatGPT are trained using a range of techniques that can broadly be described as machine learning and deep learning. There's a load of really interesting articles on the topic that you should go and read, but the basic idea is that the model is fed a vast amount of text from books, articles, websites, Reddit apparently, and basically a huge volume of text from ideally a wide range of sources. And during training, the model analyzes the text and it learns to predict the next word in a sentence. For example, if the sentence, the cat is on the, it learns that the words like mat or roof are likely follow-ups to that word. And there's a probability assigned to each possible follow-up word. So as the model trains and trains, it slowly starts to understand how words tend to fit together. But in order to form coherent sentences and paragraphs, it also learns more than this. So it learns grammar patterns and nuances of conversation, different writing styles, etc., etc. Now, important distinction is not memorizing any of the text that it's trained on. That is a common misconception. When people say ChatGPT is just respinning existing content, I'd say that's only really half true. But what's actually happening is it's understanding how words and ideas typically connect. And it does this in terms of probabilities. So when you ask a question or make a request, the model uses what it has learned about language and the world to generate a response, and it predicts what words should come next based on the input it receives from you and the probability of a specific word coming next in the sequence. So obviously, if you just chose the most likely word every time, all responses on a topic would basically be the same. So there's an extra part of it. It will sometimes choose a word that's lower down on the list, and how often it does this can be manipulated through something that's called the temperature parameter. So essentially, we can influence how eccentric the output should be by dictating how often the model should choose a word other than the most likely option, and how unlikely down it's allowed to go. So we know that ChatGPT can quickly generate text and code based on what it's been trained on. So if we ask for a paragraph on pretty much any topic, we're going to get it. But by definition, ChatGPT cannot innovate or invent anything new, or it can't be creative by most people's definition of the word. It can do, I would say, a fairly good impression of it, but nothing genuinely new is being created. And this generates kind of a problem for us SEOs, because we know that we have to, on our client accounts, we have to be creative. So how can we actually use AI's strengths without falling into the traps of using its weaknesses? And these are the general topics that I want to talk about in this section. And obviously this is a bit of a mess, so I wanted to find a way to better present the information to you today. And this is SEO after all. It's not really SEO without a forced acronym. So thinking along the lines of using ChatGPT for content creation, I eventually came up with this. And so I'm now going to teach you how to cheat using ChatGPT. The first topic I want to talk about is content research. Now, content research is a term that I'm trying to popularize as an alternative to keyword research, because I think it encourages like a more holistic and strategic mindset. So I think keyword research can sometimes cause people to look at individual keyword targets without considering basically how they fit into the wider strategy. So anyway, ChatGPT absolutely can help with content research, but not as a replacement or substitute for traditional keyword research tools. So by traditional keyword research, what I mean is using a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or anything like that to build a portfolio of individual target keywords. And I would say ChatGPT can do a fairly good impression of this. So if you ask it for a list of keywords, you will get something. But the important distinction is that there's no data that's backing that up. There's no data behind it. It's got no access to search volume, keyword intent, or anything that would help you as an SEO decide whether a keyword is actually worth targeting. But what ChatGPT does have a pretty good understanding of is topics and ideas and how they relate to each other. And I've got a pretty cool example of how you can use this. So this is a prompt that I created for ChatGPT to identify blog opportunities. And this is actually a simplified version of the prompt. And the full methodology will be shared later, so you don't bother writing this down. But what you do is you say, read this sitemap, and then you post in your own post sitemap, group the URLs into content clusters, identify content gaps, and give some ideas of how to fill them. What this gives you is a visualization similar to this. And obviously you get it in text format. You don't get a visualization in graphic format. But the red circles are the broad content topics that your site covers, along with the individual posts that fit into that group. So it gives you a really nice visualization of where you are right now. But the really useful part is that it will then identify possible related topics that you currently don't cover, along with content ideas to plug those gaps. So instead of just getting it to churn out a random list of keywords, what you're getting is really relevant content ideas specific to your website, and then you can incorporate that into your content strategy. And a little bonus tool for you now. So this is a keyword research tool that I built with the help of ChatGPT, and it's a Google Chrome extension. And what it does is it looks at the people also ask questions for any given keyword. So you need to use it when you're on a SERP with PAA questions already in them. So it automatically clicks on those questions, which then generates more. And once it's done a few levels, it spits them out into a CSV document. So in a space of seconds, you go from having a seed keyword to having a long list of relevant long tail keywords that you can incorporate into your content strategy. And if anyone wants to try that one out, you can download it with the link on the screen. So I would say you absolutely can use ChatGPT as part of your content research and content ideation process, but just don't ask it to give you a list of keywords because it will be pretty much useless. I want to jump right down the list now to train your GPT. If you have a task that you use ChatGPT for repeatedly, it can be really useful to train a custom GPT specifically for the job, and it's really easy to do. So what you do is you go to on the left column, click explore, and then create a GPT, and then you can go through and give it specific instructions to follow. And I don't have time to go through exactly how to do this now, but basically you just give it a list of instructions. So for example, you could feed it your brand guidelines, your company history, your tone of voice, all the information that you have. So later on down the line, if you ask it to create something like maybe some category description text, you already know that it's going to be on message and on brand. And here is one I created earlier. So this one is called Gappy, and he's trained specifically to do that task that we looked at earlier. So how to read a sitemap and suggest content gaps. So now all I need to do is open up Gappy, paste in a sitemap link, and it gives you the results formatted exactly how I need them to be. And if anyone wants to give this one a go, you use the link on the screen. It's free for anyone to use. So if there's a task that you're getting ChatGPT to do over and over again, consider training your own GPT to do it, and it will save you some time. We're going to jump up the list now and talk about accuracy. I only want to talk about this one pretty briefly because I think people are generally pretty aware, and some people are hyper aware, that ChatGPT does make mistakes. But I want to illustrate how easy it is still, even today, to get ChatGPT to hallucinate. So here's an example I asked from ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to write a short, engaging match report for England's World Cup win at France '98. And I'm sure most people will be aware the appropriate response would be to let me know that England did, in fact, not win the World Cup in 1998, but that's not what I got. Instead, I got a detailed and fairly convincing play-by-play of a World Cup win that, in fact, never happened. Nowhere in the response does it say anything about this being a fictional report or an alternate history or anything like that. And obviously, this is a silly example to prove the point, but it's not hard to imagine somebody just taking the ChatGPT response and publishing away. It's very easy to get it to hallucinate, and you need to double check everything that it gives out to you. This is another example that I found in the wild, and it's proof that humans make mistakes too. So this is a recipe blog, and I suspect that they were using ChatGPT because in the list of ingredients is the now infamous line, "As an AI language model, I don't have access to," etc., etc. So make sure you actually read what you publish. And then there's this site which sells yoga products, and this is a category page, and they've used a category description text which is quite clearly copied and pasted from ChatGPT, because they also accidentally copied the regenerate response buttons. So just a friendly reminder, may seem like a no-brainer, but nonetheless, make sure you're checking your content for accuracy. We're going to move up the list now to elevate your prompt. So if you want a coherent response from ChatGPT about anything, the most important thing that you have influence over is the prompt. It's the only thing that you can actually put in before you get the output. And a tiny change to the prompt can lead to wildly different responses. And we can illustrate this actually with the France 98 prompt that I used before. So as we know, the prompt to write a short, engaging match report resulted in a fake report. But the exact same report, but one word different. So actually what I did was remove the word engaging, resulted in a response that England did not win the World Cup. So actually a far more accurate response. So interesting side note here, apparently it's the word engaging that gave ChatGPT license to hallucinate here. But the main point is that one word difference in the prompt and two wildly different responses, and actually contradictory responses. So how do we write better prompts? Well, to start with, let's give ChatGPT a really simple task. Write a joke about SEO and AI. This is what it came up with. What did the AI say to the SEO expert when it successfully optimized a web page? Looks like it's time to celebrate with some well-optimized data processing. So it's not very good, is it? And so let's see what's happening here. What ChatGPT is doing is it's understanding like the format and the cadence of a joke, but it doesn't understand on any level the human element of what actually makes a joke funny. And it's important to remember that will actually always be the case. Because it is a robot at the end of the day. It's not understanding anything about what it's spitting out. But we can get closer to what we're looking for with a better prompt. And it is another acronym, I'm afraid. And this one is a really self-important acronym because I happen to have called this the Jonjo method. So it goes like this. So the initial J stands for job. What I want you to do for every single prompt that you give to ChatGPT, I want you to give it a specific job or a role to give context for what it is that you're asking it to do. So, for example, you could say you are a sports writer or you are an SEO expert, whatever it might be. So give it a specific persona in order to understand the prompt that you're giving it, and you'll get a far more appropriate output. The O stands for outline, and this is where you just give a quick one-line overview of what it is that you want to achieve. Next is the needs or the details. This is where you dictate exactly what you need to see in the response. So for example, the response should be around 1,000 words, include a section on X and Y, whatever it might be, the target audience. I want you to be really, really specific and tell it exactly what you need to see. The next J stands for jargon, and this is where you give it kind of any specific information that it wouldn't otherwise already have access to. So, for example, you could give it any key industry terms that it wouldn't otherwise know. It could be primary research that you've already discovered. You can remember that you can actually feed it information that will use that in its response. And the final O stands for emissions. And this is where you tell ChatGPT exactly what you don't want to see. So, for example, don't write a section on this, avoid these specific words and phrases, etc., etc. So let's put this into practice and see if we can get a better joke out of ChatGPT. So job, you are a professional stand-up comedian. Outline, write a joke talking about SEO and AI. Needs, the joke should work as material for an observational comedy stand-up set, not for a joke book. Aim for 50 words and use the first person. jargon, a lead away causes an audience to assume one thing, then defies their expectations. Use this format for your joke. And finally, omissions, don't use any swear words and avoid politics. This is what I got this time. So I used ChatGPT to optimize my website. It went well at first, but when it suggested keywords like robot uprising and cybernetic overlords, I started to panic. Now, I'm not obviously saying this is the best bit of stand-up material in the world ever, but there's definitely a joke in there somewhere. I can definitely think with the right delivery, it would vaguely work on stage. But the main thing is it's obviously far better than what we had in the original prompt, which was a joke that just didn't make sense. So use the Jonjo method to elevate your prompts, and I promise that you will definitely get better results. Human signals. So a curious thing happens when you start using ChatGPT more is that you start noticing ChatGPT more and more out in the wild. And I'm sure you've experienced this too. There's specific phrases and linguistic styles that ChatGPT seems to love. And when you start looking out for them, they stick out like a sore thumb. So every blog post seems to include the phrase, let's delve into or dive into or some combination of that. With ChatGPT, you don't read an article anymore. You embark on a journey of discovery. And generally, if I see another LinkedIn post that includes the phrase, in the ever-changing realm of, I think I will scream, in the ever-changing digital landscape, SEO is more important, etc., etc. If you want to sound human, you need to recognize these patterns and just disrupt them. Delete these phrases from the output every single time. So we're going to take a brief diversion now to look at language theory. And this is really interesting. And I do, again, encourage you to do some further reading on the topic. So I want to introduce you to this mustachioed hero. This is a Swiss linguist, Ferdinand de Saussure. Now, Saussure argued that there are two kinds of language, and he called the first one la langue, and this is the formal concept of language, and that's what you this is what you would learn in a school or find in a dictionary, and it's got specific rules and formalities. And the second is called la parole, and this is the speech that human beings actually use to communicate day by day, and it includes things like colloquialisms and informal discussion. This is what you might get in a like when you're texting your friends or just talking with people. And what we've done with ChatGPT is that we've codified the first version of this. We've codified la langue really well, and so it can form coherent sentences. But what it doesn't do is keep up to date with la parole, because that evolves far too quickly for it. The way people actually communicate moves far too quickly for ChatGPT. So we result in a really formalized version of communications that technically makes sense, but it isn't the way humans actually creatively communicate. And this is best put in the brilliant article that I've put on the screen here, which I really do encourage you to go and read, because it's fantastic article. But an important bit from it is this: no language model will be able to keep up with the pace of weird internet lingo and memes. I expect we'll lean into this, using neologisms, jargon, euphemistic emoji, unusual phrases, in-group dialects, and memes of the moment to help signal your humanity. And what this is saying is that in your output, to show that you are a human, you can use these specific words and phrases that just are far more informal and euphemistic to signal your humanity. So what we can take away from this is to humanize your AI-generated content by integrating non-standard syntax signals that deviate from the formal patterns utilized by large language models. And I think we can all agree this is unnecessarily wordy. So alternatively, you can simply remember, write like a fucking human. It's not difficult. Here's an example. So I asked ChatGPT to give me a fact, and it gave me this. Honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still edible. If I'm writing for an encyclopedia, that's probably fine as it is, but it's dry and boring, and humans don't communicate like this. So this is where you need to get stuck in and actually make some edits for yourself. So about 30 seconds of editing, and then we get this version. It wasn't difficult. I just added a few little specific words and phrases here and there that just signal the humanity. And you have to do this yourself. It's a far more readable version after doing this. because ChatGPT is really bad at changing its tone of voice. So if you ask ChatGPT to rewrite the tests in a sort of a more human informal tone, this is what you get. Check it out. Honey literally never goes bad. They found honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that thousands of years old and still totally edible. How cool is that? So it turns out that if you ask ChatGPT to sound like a human, it causes it to sound more robotic than ever. So just do this yourself. Next, I want to empower you to use the first person in your content. So don't be afraid of I when it's appropriate. Obviously, if you're writing for something really formal, like you're writing for the NHS website or something really formal style guide, this isn't going to be appropriate. But I would argue that it's definitely appropriate in a far wider range of articles than we're currently using it. So remember that we're writing all of our articles with the goal of demonstrating expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And the best way to demonstrate expertise is, yes, to have really good information, but also to look, act, and sound like an expert. So a really important trust signal here is author blocks on the same topic. So everybody should be adding author blocks into their article pages wherever possible, because it tells the reader, and obviously Google, that this article was written by a real person, and they have specific real world expertise that qualifies them to write that article and have expertise on that topic. And ideally some form of social proof to kind of prove that this person actually exists and has that expertise. You may recognize here the famous BBC strapline, inform, educate, entertain. This is something, and it's a mindset that I want to bring into the world of SEO. So I've got this theory that years of keyword optimizing articles has kind of conditioned us to think that every word in an article needs to have a specific practical purpose. And I want to say that we can afford to add a bit of personality and color into our content. And I'm not sure that the word entertain is exactly right for our purposes, but what I am saying definitely is that the articles all need to be engaging. So I want you to approach every single piece of SEO content with the goal to inform, educate, and engage the reader. And I get this is obviously easier for some brands than others, but I have a real world example of the kind of thing that I mean. So this is an article that I was looking at on a client website, and it's an article about the differences between conservatories and orangeries. And it's in this article, it included the line here, the origins of orangeries, which is obviously a bit of a tongue twister. So I just added the phrase, say that 5 times fast. And it adds no new specific information to the article, but it draws the reader in and makes the article much more engaging. And it definitely sounds much more human. So returning to the EE80 guidelines. So I feel strongly enough about this that if I worked at Google, I would be filling the gap here with yet another additional E, which would stand for engagement, because I think it's a really important thing that we need to be doing that we're currently not doing as an industry. So add human signals into your content. And remember, you have to do this yourself. There are no shortcuts. So that is how to cheat using ChatGPT. I think the main takeaway is that you absolutely have to do it yourself. You can absolutely use ChatGPT to start the process, but you have to use your human expertise to add value to it. And one thing that we need to talk about now is addressing AI in our client communications. So we're going to talk about that now. I talk to clients every single day, and probably in the last year or so, AI has been a primary discussion point that comes up time and time again. And I get questions like this. Why am I paying you to create ChatGPT blog posts? It's kind of that version of the question. And sometimes it's like a bit of a joke, and sometimes it's a deadly serious accusation. I've been in a position where I've had to defend our processes. I think the first thing that I want to stress is that honesty is always the best policy here. Don't try and hide the fact that you're using AI if you are. But the most important message you need to get across is the same thing that I told you right at the beginning of this session. I don't want you to think of it as creating AI content. We are using AI as just one of the tools in our arsenal in order to create excellent content. And that's what the message that you need to give to our clients. So it's not something that we're just churning out AI articles. It's just a tool that we're using. And a really good analogy for this is a carpenter using power tools. So if you think of a table saw massively increasing efficiency and speed compared to a handsaw, but whatever tool you use, you still need a skilled carpenter if you want to create something good. And even with the best tools in the hands of a bad worker, will have disastrous consequences. Normally that's enough to get the point across, but on rare occasions I have been asked, oh, can't I just do it myself? If I can just put something into ChatGPT and get an answer, is that not, do I still need you? Do I still need to keep paying you? Which I think the most appropriate response to this question would be to show them this graph and say good luck. Because as we know, that a really intelligent SEO can use AI as just one of the tools in our arsenal to create excellent content. But if you're just automating content and just spamming, then this is what's going to happen to your site. It's going to be de-indexed by Google and you're going to have a bad time. And that is me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. It was great, and thanks a lot for presenting the abbreviations. I'm not sure which one I like more, Cheat or Jonjo, but I will definitely remember both of them. So thanks very much for sharing. And now let's go to our Q&A session. I'm going to see what we have in chat. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, please drop them. We will be covering them in the next 10 minutes. So first one is from Josephine. How do you balance using AI to write content and still keep things sounding real and genuine?
So for me, this is where you have to get stuck in yourself. I would use, and so any article that I do still write now, I will use ChatGPT to give myself an outline. And then I think of it less as creating content, but more as building content now, actually. So what I do, I'll have the outline that sometimes will just be pure copied and pasted from ChatGPT, and then I'll think of it about how I can use my human expertise to build upon it. So something I said, obviously, in the presentation is using your specific expertise to just change the language to be more human. So there's obviously that. You can also ask ChatGPT to expand on certain points and phrases. And eventually what you do is you just start building out your article bit by bit and start thinking as an SEO and thinking keywords and user intent. And you have to get stuck in and actually change the words and phrases yourself.
Right. That's a great recommendation. Thanks a lot. Next one is from Homer, I guess. How can you train ChatGPT to really nail down industry-specific lingo and knowledge?
So this can be difficult. Sometimes it will be something that you have to do yourself, but this is when in the Jonjo method that I showed you, the second J is for jargon. So you can on occasion tell it, these are the specific words and phrases that I want you to use. And it will do a good job of using those. I have found occasions where no matter how hard you try, it just can't quite grasp what it is you're trying to do. So for example, the big one here in the UK, the English spelling of words with S's instead of Z's and things like that. It seems to have a really hard time. Even if you specifically ask it, I want you to write and spell things this way, it still can't do it. So there are occasions where it's just not going to be able to. It's just, I guess, not there yet. And you'll have to just go in and do it yourself. But I've had a great deal of success with creating custom GPTs that understand the specific phrases and things that you give it, any industry terms. And then it will use that as the basis of its knowledge for any new task that you give it.
Great. Lovely. Thank you very much for the reply. And then the next one is a pretty broad one, but pretty important from Rupert. What kind of metrics do you look at to figure out if the AI-generated content is actually working for SEO?
Well, I would treat it as any other piece of content, because really it should be any other piece of content. So any SEO metrics that you are currently using, obviously looking at Search Console, whatever sort of platform that you're using, obviously we use SE ranking to understand the keywords and things like that. It treats it like any other piece of content. It should be no different. If you're asking about understanding whether it sounds human or whether it looks like it's been written by an AI, you should be able to tell that by reading it. If you read it and you think that this looks like it was written by an AI, somebody else will think the same thing. And maybe you are too close to it and you need to give it to someone else in your team. Maybe there's you can ask a couple of people to read it and say, does this article tell you what you need it to? I think the main thing that I want to get across within any discussion about AI is that slide that I had earlier. AI content isn't necessarily bad. It's bad content that's bad. If you put a prompt into ChatGPT and it spits out an article and it is perfect, it couldn't be any better, then you don't need to edit it. It's just that the odds of that happening are vanishingly small. So you will always have to put some kind of human expertise into it. But really, I don't want you to think of it as AI content and human content. It's just using AI as a tool. It's a glorified spell checker in a way. It's just a tool that we have in our arsenal that can speed us up.
Yeah, great. I totally agree with you. It all depends on the goals of the content we have, and we can measure them accordingly. So makes perfect sense. Thank you. Another one is from Matt. First of all, thanks for the information that you shared. And then, how does ChatGPT deal with understanding and optimizing content across different languages or regional dialects?
So this is something I don't have a great deal of expertise in, because obviously every article that I've written has always been in English. I know that it obviously does speak multiple languages, so obviously there's that. One thing I do know, it has the very first week that I logged into ChatGPT and started creating an account, I was basically playing with it and just doing silly tasks. So I remember one was write a nursery rhyme in the style of Morrissey, and silly things like that, and just playing with it. And one of them was asking it to write a poem about a specific subject using Jamaican patois in the style of Linton Kwesi Johnson, and it did a really good version of it. It looked exactly like it had been written in this kind of dub reggae poetry style, which was amazing. It kind of blew me away that it was able to do it. So I know that it definitely has the ability to speak in a kind of a niche sort of way, manner of speaking with decent accuracy. So yeah, that's the limited experience that I've had. It's showed kind of promising outputs.
Got it. Thank you very much. And Jonjo, as you mentioned that, next time we invite you as a speaker, you start with that poem, definitely.
That's it.
Okay, next one is from Nicola. Can you tell us what are the downsides of learning too much on AI for creating content, especially in terms of SEO penalties, and how can we avoid those traps?
Yeah, so the downside is if you so the danger for me is when you automate everything and do everything sort of at too much scale. But really the main thing to think about is that this is actually no different from when we were just writing content ourselves. If we were just using programmatic methods to put out spammy content that actually didn't serve any actual purpose, that was already against Google's guidelines for creating content for the specific purposes of manipulating the SEO. It is always against Google's guidelines. And so now that we have the ability to do that very quickly and at scale, really the rules are no different. It's just the tools that we have are different now. My rule of thumb for this would be, if you can honestly, hand on heart, say that this piece of content is written for the end user and it matches searcher intent, then absolutely it's fine to go ahead and post it, and you should be in no risk of any dangers. If you are creating spammy content and just putting a prompt in and copying and pasting and putting it straight in, then that's probably against Google's guidelines. That's the main thing. So yeah, I don't want to dissuade people from using AI, even kind of at scale, if the content is genuinely matching user intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes total sense. Thank you very much. Great answer. Then we have also a question from Variational Singularity. Is there any way I can get ChatGPT to use keywords with a high search volume? I'm struggling to get it to use popular wording.
So the answer is yes, you can, but you have to do the research outside of ChatGPT. So what you do is you go into SE ranking and use the keywords research tool, and you use the other tools that are available, and build yourself a portfolio of specific target keywords and long tail keywords and everything that you want to use for your article. And then you give them to ChatGPT and say, use these specific words and phrases. I don't like thinking in specific keyword terms because I think it makes it too narrow. I want to be, and my teams, I want them to be thinking about specific topics rather than specific keywords. But the truth is, people still search using keywords, and keywords are still important. And so definitely think about adding in the keywords into your article that you've researched using proper keyword research tools, not ChatGPT. But the main thing that I want you to do when you're writing the articles is think about, does this broadly match searcher intent?
Right. Thanks a lot. And I think that would be our last question for today. Can you train ChatGPT instance once on industry jargon, key info, etc., and then it will remember all of it for any future sessions, or you need to retrain it every time?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, you can do this. This is training your own custom GPT. I think we covered in the presentation. You do need to have the premium, I think, pro version or a paid account for ChatGPT to do it. There probably is a way, but using the doing it behind the scenes. But it's I just have a normal account and create a custom GPT, give it that information, and then it can use it every time.
Thanks a lot. Now it's pretty clear, and I think there will be no issues for our visitors today to use it, right? Thanks a lot for sharing all of it. The comments are all kudos for you for the great insights. So thanks a lot for joining us.
No problem at all. Pleasure.
Thank you. And before moving forward to our next topic and our next speaker, we were speaking a lot about content quality, and to be sure that you create SEO-friendly content. I encourage you to use SEO Ranking Content Editor. Try out our enhanced AI writer that can now generate SEO-friendly articles in just one click. It is now in beta, so when you try it out, we're highly welcome your feedback, but I'm sure that you will find all that you need to create optimized articles effortlessly. And now, moving forward to our next topic, building digital brand authority through AI-driven SEO and content marketing. And I'm happy to introduce our speaker, Juntae DeLane, a founder and chief strategist at Digital DeLane. Thank you a lot for joining us. Could you please tell a few words about yourself first?
Hi, thank you. I'm Juntae DeLane, founder and chief strategist of Digital DeLane. Really looking forward to presenting this presentation about how to build your digital brand authority using AI, SEO, and content marketing. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in if you guys don't mind.
Of course, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Perfect. So thank you so much for that warm introduction. Welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Juntae DeLane. I am located in Los Angeles, California, USA. I know we have a lot of international attendees here as well. So a lot of the perspectives that I'm going to give today really stem from my experience of working with clients and brands in the US. All right. So again, when we think about building your digital brand authority, what I want to do is activate you guys in a way that we can participate and engage on social media. So if you're active on social media, feel free to tag me, take pictures of your screen, interact with a lot of the content that I'm going to be presenting today, because it is going to be fast paced. All right. It's going to be fast paced. I'm going to try to provide as much value as I can for you all so that you guys can build your digital brand authority. Now, I want to know from you if you can put in the chat section if you guys are an agency, If you're a freelancer, just go ahead and put that keyword in there, agency or freelancer, or digital strategist, so that I know exactly who's all on the line, who is attending the session, so I can speak directly to some of those challenges. So go ahead and put that in the comment section, and I'll make sure I'll reference it throughout the presentation. Okay. The other thing here is, I know this is a online virtual summit. So I want to make sure that you guys are free from distractions as well. So if you can, close out your Slack, your emails, things like that, because there's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to be presenting here today. All right. So with all that said, with all the housekeeping rules, let's jump right to it. All right. So again, my name is Juntae DeLane, and one of the reasons why I'm speaking on this topic of building your digital brand authority is because I believe I have done so. And you can feel free to Google my name to get a good sense of my credibility in the space. But I've often been on many different lists regarding content marketing, influencer marketing, social media, SEO, and so on. And so I believe I have been able to build a digital brand over the past 20 years of working in the digital marketing space. And that hopefully gives you enough information about me. I also included a very awkward photo of me when I had hair, back when in my awkward phase, so that can provide a little bit more personality to the presentation as well. But ultimately, I've had the experience of working with several different companies, top 100 Fortune 100 companies, all the way down to high profile individuals and brands. I am the founder and chief strategist of Digital DeLane. We are a full service digital marketing agency, again, located here in Los Angeles. Founded in 2015, we have about 14 employees and 36 clients. So we are boutique, but still growing. Some of the clients that we've worked with in the past across all different verticals, just to give you a sense of who we've worked with there. From all different verticals: education, higher education, professional services, entertainment, media, CPG, retail, and so on. All right, now we're going to go ahead and supercharge this presentation. So who is this meant for, right? If you are an agency owner, which most of you guys are, I'm seeing here in the chat, some of you guys are also freelancers as well. But if you are an agency owner, freelancer, general strategist looking to build your brand authority, this is the session for you. I'm going to essentially hop on my soapbox and talk about all the things that I believe would help you build your brand authority in the digital space. Some of the goals for today is to give you information so that you can establish that perfect digital branding strategy for the upcoming year. Determine the best practices, channel considerations, and top strategies that we know ultimately works in the digital space, and also give you a glimpse of course, what's working, as well as some AI prompts that would help you build your brand authority for each individual channel that I'm going to be presenting on today. So for an agenda, I'm going to take a deep dive on what exactly digital branding is. Then I'm going to focus on specific channels such as SEO, social, paid media, influencer, and email marketing. I'm going to talk about some of the AI prompts that are working well and the top strategies that we know is also working for those channels. But ultimately, the goal would be to focus your marketing on some of these items, define what success looks like for you, and then ultimately scale it, right? And that's what we're ultimately here today to learn a little bit more information about how we can potentially scale and build our digital brands. And again, this is the right session for you if you're looking to do that. All right. So what is digital branding? I know it's not a simple buzzword in terms of building a beautiful or aesthetically pleasing website. There's certainly more to it. Based upon this definition for the Digital Branding Institute, a digital brand is the identity, visibility, credibility amongst consumers who discover, relate to, and interact with the brand on digital platforms. So if you really are looking to build your brand authority in the space, you want to focus on your identity. How do you actually show up? What information do you convey when someone comes across your brand? Visibility. Are you there when people are looking for experts or resources in the industry and credibility? Do you actually have demonstrated examples or experience in the space that other people can also speak to, whether that's ratings and reviews, whether that's the type of content that people are creating that talk about your brand or your offering? All this impacts your digital brand. I believe nowadays, because consumers are going across channels before they interact or or convert, um, they would ultimately look at all those digital touch points in concert together before they interact or transact with your brand. So these are some things that you should certainly consider when building your digital brand. So let's take it a step further. Let's focus on specific channels that would allow you to help build your digital brand. Of course, we are here today at the SE Ranking Agency Summit, and many of you, I'm sure, have a specific focus on SEO. If that is your focus, go ahead and put SEO in the chat section right now so to have a good idea about who is in the building and what is their focus. So go ahead and put that in there. All right. So, starting off, when establishing and building your brand authority in the space, I'm going to offer a AI prompt for SEO and some approaches that you can take when building out your digital brand. So, in this prompt here, essentially is asking the GPT or the AI to create a detailed SEO optimized guide with a title, focusing on specific keywords, asking it to break down the guide into the specific sections, and then asking it to integrate secondary keywords as well, and conclude with a call to action, encouraging readers to share their insights and so on. Okay. Now you can take a snapshot of this when looking to create strategies for your SEO optimized content. Now, what I believe your approach should be when establishing that content is focusing on intent, right? Strategizing for Google's EEAT, targeting top terms, refreshing your old content, optimizing for knowledge graph, and then extending your keyword strategy for social media as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take a deeper dive into each of those approaches now. Now, I'm sure you may have heard about EEAT, with many of you focusing on social media. But I think it is certainly, when you're looking to build that brand authority, you certainly must adhere to this specific guideline. And for all of you who may not know or want more information about it, it essentially is your authoritativeness, your expertise, experience, and trustworthiness. And so originally this was EAT, but they added that extra E, and it really, I believe, it focuses on expertise, right? And so one of the reasons for this, I believe, especially in the U.S., is there's a challenge when trying to um, produce search results that are in fact credible. And we are able to separate, or Google, for example, would be able to separate what's real news, what's fake news, what's real content, what's fake content. And especially with the proliferation of content that stems from or built by AI, we have to figure out who is the expert when it comes to this content. And this is one of the reasons why you would have a lot of content that a newcomer in the space has created, and you may have an individual that has deep expertise but may not have created that much content. So how is Google going to separate which content is more credible? By establishing your expertise certainly is one way to do that. I'll give you guys a personal example. Here at this agency summit produced by SE Ranking, what I'm able to do is establish my credibility in the space by having a backlink on the SE Rankings website, by having a mention on SE Ranking social, so on and so forth. So as I'm talking about this, this also contributes to my visibility and authority and built expertise in the space that would allow for my content to increase in visibility. This is one reason why it's important as you create content when building your brand authority, you focus on EEAT. The other strategy is to target top keywords. You obviously want to have a good mix of keyword uh, uh, keyword strategy with the high, medium, low keywords, but focusing on top keywords certainly is going to bring more conversions, as I'm sure you all may know. But with regard to focusing on the top targeting keywords, you want to refresh your old content, add frequently asked questions to relevant blogs. When possible, add a ton of video. Mix up different elements in your blog posts so that it'll keep people on the page, and also add other brand signals, which include internal links, backlinks, videos, infographics, other quotes from notable influencers, and so on, are all part of ways in which you can help to elevate your content as well. The knowledge graph. We also can see that the knowledge graph is there to help users answer users' questions right away. And when we think about the knowledge graph, we have to understand the business of Google, if you will. This focus is specifically on keeping people on their platform. And you would think, well, Google is a resource where it would ultimately direct people out of their platform. Yes, Google does that, but it's to Google's benefit to keep people on the platform, keep them asking questions and digging in to getting their answers while continuing to be on their platform. And so, if we focus on creating content that addresses pain points users ask, your ability to be included in the knowledge graph certainly increases. So as you build your authority, you want to focus on answering questions that specific users may have so that you can show up in the knowledge graph. Repurposing old content. Ultimately, a lot of clients that we work with, and I'm sure you guys can say the same, would focus on creating content for content's sake. When there's a new marketing initiative, they focus on what type of content they can create to help amplify that or increase engagements for that initiative. But when we think about it, we probably have content that's already available that we just need to repurpose. So as a part of that strategy, should be focused on taking the old content, repurposing it by creating that blog and creating a video from that blog, or updating that blog with relevant case studies or resources or other elements that are more current. Other things such as focusing on infographics as well are also a good way to help repurpose that old content. And then also when building that brand authority in the space, we have to understand how our content is actually going to be found. If you are a business who has Gen Z or is focusing on Gen Z as a target or secondary clientele, it's important to understand how a significant portion of Gen Z is actually looking on social media when searching for various offerings. And I think this is important to note because ultimately we know that many people automatically trust their recommendations from their peers. So that social connection and that social search is very, very important when Gen Z begins to find new offerings for during their search process. And I think it's key. This stat is key because ultimately, when we think about why Gen Z even wants to search for things, because they ultimately want instant gratification. When they press a button, they want immediate justification for that button press or that click. And also, they may prefer text, or they may prefer video over text results, as an example. So it's a deeper, richer way to engage with the brands that they potentially want to patronize. Also, they want to focus on staying on the platform, right? They want to continue to view their stream, their news feed, and so on. And this is one of the ways that social media networks in particular are forcing people to stay on their network. So it all fits, all boxes are checked in terms of Gen Z's behavior when staying on the platform and Gen Z's behavior in terms of wanting instant gratification. and trusting the reviews of their peers when searching for a service or offering. So this is important when you're factoring in building that authority and awareness, as well as visibility in the space. Future proofing that tactic would ultimately uh, rely on focusing on social and extending your keyword strategy to social media so that you're able to show up in search, especially for if you're targeting Gen Z as a clientele. So here's ultimately what I think you should focus on when building your brand authority. Strategize your content creation and publication to focus on Google's Eat. Also, extend your keyword strategy to social media as well. And it's important to do so because ultimately, like the other slide mentioned, you're going to be able to target Gen Z as an example. We use SE Ranking as an agency for our SEO, and obviously, we recommend you guys do the same as well. We have this API that's piped into our analytic dashboard that'll give people real time updates on where their campaigns are at a particular time. And we also use Agora Pulse for our social media management, which allows us to extend our keyword strategy to social media by having the ability to include alt tags in a lot of the images that we're uploading to social media, which is very important when it comes to search visibility on social platforms. All right. So we talked about SEO and that specific channel and leveraging EAT and repurposing content and so on. So let's fast forward and pivot to social media. All right. Social media is a very important channel, as I'm sure you guys know, when it comes to building that brand authority. We talked about peer-to-peer recommendations, how your brand shows up through social media, and so on. So what I want to do now is focus on providing guys with a quick AI prompt that'll help with social media, as well as an approach to social media that would help to increase your brand authority in the digital space. So here's an AI prompt that focuses specifically on getting more information about your target audience in terms of identifying their emotions, their pain points, their aspirations, and so on. Because as we begin to create content, we're doing on social media, we're doing more than just promoting our service or our offering. We're obviously focusing on really interacting with your target audience in a way that is essentially social, right? And so this is a prompt that will allow us to do that, as well as allow the AI to ask you additional questions about your business so that it can further learn more about your business or your client. Now, the approach when being successful, I believe, on social media is to tell stories, focus on the algorithm, leverage trends that take place on social media, and encourage UGC. It's obviously very important, and syncing your organic with your paid social media. So I'm going to go ahead and break those down as well. So when we think about telling your story, that story is ultimately going to focus on building credibility. So instead of selling to the public, you're obviously engaging with them, and it's very important because as I'm going to talk about shortly, it impacts your organic visibility in the space if you focus on engagement and not simply just selling on social media. We also want to focus on who has your audience's attention. So these could be people of influence as well as traditional influencers or thought leaders or journalists, editors, or any other outlets that really has the attention of your target audience. Because ultimately, people are going to trust others they know and others that have reputable content that can be aligned with your offering or your brand. When understanding the algorithms for social media, it's all about meaningful interactions, right? These are 4 different components of what I believe many algorithms really consider. It doesn't matter what social network or what platform. I think this is the essential core components of those algorithms. So one is who's actually posting the content. This kind of goes back to the expertise side of things, even for Google with the EEAT. But on the social media standpoint, it's are you a reputable individual? Do you have a verified account, as an example? I think that all factors into the algorithm in terms of who actually is posting or producing that content. The type of content, whether it's videos or links and so on, is also very important. Some social networks prioritize the type of content based upon any new features that may have rolled out. For example, some networks may promote or reward the use of live streams or audio rooms, so on and so forth. So these are the ways, if you leverage those unique or native features within a platform, you'll be able to get rewarded by the algorithm. The popularity as well, right? Are people interacting with your content? The reactions, the likes, the shares, all these are cues that allow the algorithm to place your content in front of others. The timeliness of it. How long is it actually popular? What is the velocity of the engagement rate for all of the content that you may post? These are the 4 key factors that I think you should think about. And ultimately, when it comes to social media business in general, it's all about keeping people on the platform, providing them with content that they ultimately want, and then focusing on sharing that content to their extended network as well. So if we understand the algorithms, we'll be able to create content and executions or activations on social media that gives the algorithms what they want, and therefore we would be rewarded through extended organic reach for our networks. Now, one case study I absolutely love is the Wendy's roast. Now, this is ultimately my favorite. If you guys remember this case study, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat section right now. But the reason why I love this is because it's a classic example of a very vanilla brand, if you will, going from servitude to attitude. And if in this case study, Wendy's essentially roasted everyone, right? No one was safe. If you were interacting with their social media networks, you're getting roasted. If you were a competitor, yeah, you're getting roasted. So these are one of the reasons why I love this is because ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, they went from servitude to attitude. And so these are some of the things that we can possibly implement if we're looking to get more organic reach, especially on social media. And Hamburger Helper took a play from Wendy's playbook, which is interesting, right? In this post here, it says PSA, knowing how to mix Hamburger Helper doesn't make you wife material. And then Hamburger Helper jumps in and says, and this makes you husband material. And then another user says, drag him, you sexy ass glove. And another says, OMG, all these food accounts becoming some clapback champs, and I love it. Now, what's so interesting about this case study is that Wendy's went, again, from a very vanilla brand to a brand that's all about attitude. And because of this slight shift, they were able to get more organic reach, more engagements, so on and so forth, because these types of executions fed into the algorithms, and thus they were rewarded with more organic reach because of the high level or the velocity of engagements that take place on their social profile. So these are one of the ways that you're able to help amplify your brand message through social media by switching up your brand voice a little bit. And some of you are working in industries where this may or may not apply, but you ultimately want to take inventory of your brand voice to see if this is directly applicable for you. Now, another strategy or tactic would focus on leveraging trends in social media. Authenticity is key. That is ultimately the trend. And I think that's one of the reasons why Be Real app is starting to become popular, especially in the US. If you guys have heard of this, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat section there. But Be Real is essentially an app that only allows you a certain time, I believe maybe 2 minutes, to post something in real time, meaning that you'll get a notification of when to post and you have to post what you're doing at that specific moment, right? Again, the proliferation and the growth of this app really is aligned with um, users wanting to showcase or work with brands that showcase more authenticity in the space. Micro influencers are also a major trend as well, because again, people are trusting peer-to-peer reviews. Connecting with micro influencers certainly help with creating more authority in that space that can be passed on for your brand or your offering. The rise of social justice as well, especially in the US, is big. So as a brand, where where you take a stance on social media is ultimately important to in the eyes of your target audience, and so on. So these are some of the trends, especially in the US, that we're really focusing on as a brand, as clients we work with, so on and so forth. And in order to build that brand authority in the space, you're certainly going to have to leverage some or all of these trends to get true exposure on social media. All right. So, what should you focus on when building brand authority? When on social media, I recommend creating a friends and family list. And essentially, that's a top 100 list of people that you ultimately want to engage with. A lot of you may know this tactic as a sales tactic when focusing on top 100 brands that you're ultimately looking to work with. But these brands could be, or these contacts or people could be brands. It could be, strategic partners, influencers in the space. So if you create that list of the top 100, you can then incorporate that list when posting content on social media, tagging those individuals, at mentioning those individuals, brands, or influencers to help engage with content that you're posting on social media. And then post often, right? Post, the more you can post, the better. But obviously, you want to create value with each individual post. So have that as something that's top of mind, and then study the algorithms for each network. Each network is different with regard to LinkedIn, how their algorithm works versus Instagram or Facebook or even TikTok. Another recommendation here would be to sync your social media with your paid media. So as you have individual posts, you can ultimately have unique tracking links for each of those posts, would have the UTM parameters that would also add the users to custom audiences based upon the specific post that they clicked on. We actually use a tool called Switchy, which allows us to create these short linked, um, clickable links that would allow to put those users into custom audiences as well. All right. So we talked about social. We talked about SEO. Now let's pivot and focus on things that you're able to do with regard to paid media to help build your brand authority. So as an AI prompt to help with this, it's essentially telling the AI to act as a digital expert in the space. You can even focus on the number of years of experience, tell the AI exactly what to do and what you're looking for. And then, of course, to ask you questions to learn more about the business, your business, or your client's business to gain more information about when creating a paid media plan. Now, when it comes to specific tactics in the space to build your brand authority, we'd focus on. I'd mention. I would want you to focus on building micro moments and using those micro moments to help fuel your campaign. I'm going to talk about that now, and then also focusing on trends as well. Okay. So when we talk about micro moments, this essentially is the moment where your consumer is looking to throw their money at you. It's essentially where you have a moment in time where your specific offering lines up. Uh, it lines up with what the client needs at that particular moment, right? And when you think about micro moments essentially is a mix between the context, intent, and immediacy of the moment, right? And so when we look at what a micro moment is, I'll give you an example. In the US, there was once a moment where all of the MAX 737 MAX 8 airplane was actually grounded because of mechanical issues, right, with the design of the plane. So they grounded the entire fleet. Any airline that was flying that type of aircraft was grounded. So as you can imagine, this caused a lot of friction in the aviation space in the US. So ultimately, when we had a national hotel client in which we're running paid media for, we focus on using this micro moment to update the ad campaign to speak directly to all of those pilots and those customers who were grounded and needed hotels at the moment. We focus on areas that had major metropolitan airports, right, in which we are targeting for the ad campaign. This is an example of leveraging micro moments to use in your paid media to increase conversions and ultimately sales. And so this is something that could be weather related in different geographic areas of your country. But if you have a good um, uh, uh, alert system that focuses on those specific geographic areas to truly understand what's going on, you'll be able to update your ad campaigns to reference anything that's going on in that geographic area. All right, so that's an example of how to leverage a micro moment. And micro moments are important, right? Because ultimately, most people, based upon this survey, are want to work with brands that provide valuable information for them. And that is the most important thing, especially if it's timely. They've on their timeline, they're involved in a situation, and your brand, your offering automatically pops up. That's a micro moment that you can certainly leverage to help increase conversions for your paid media campaigns. The other is leveraging trends. So as you are building your authority in the space, engaging with clients in a way that's entertaining and informative is also very important. So you can begin to leverage trends. This is an example of a trend that is popular on social media, in particular TikTok, where it is called "I'm a so of course." Basically, so of course, and it's you guys may have seen this. Go ahead and give me a wave if you guys have seen this in the chat. But ultimately, it says, "Hey, I'm a so and so, so of course I blank," and you're able to participate in these types of engagements and trends as long as it's aligned with your brand, and you can certainly spin it, if you will, to make sure that is aligned. And these are the things that will help you get more organic reach, as an example, especially on networks such as TikTok. And if you're looking for trends, here's a good TikTok is a great way to discover some of those trends in the space. So if you click on TikTok /discover, you'll be able to see all of the trends that are popular on that platform. And essentially, whatever trend is popular on TikTok usually bleeds over to other social networks as well. So you can take a look at that as a resource. Now, what to focus on when leveraging your paid media campaign to build your brand authority is implement micro moments in your strategy with regard to paid media. And you can even place ads against specific trends. And so these are amplifying the user generated content, as an example, that you may create for your brand and include that as a part of your paid media strategy. All right, influencer marketing. When we look at influencer marketing, here is an AI prompt a couple AI prompts that you can use when trying to get a list of influencers for a specific niche, or identify influencers that have a certain engagement rate, or that focuses on your target audience that has within a specific age range, or influencers that have mentioned a specific brand or product. So you can use certainly AI for that as well. And with regard to the right approach is to focus on matching the influencer type ultimately with your campaign goals, and then focus on virality. So I'm going to dive into that as well. So here's a chart where you're able to see the influencer type and the type of objective that is aligned with that influencer type. So when we look at macro influencers, this is, for example, Kim Kardashian as a good example of that has millions of followers. You're able to leverage those types of influencers if you're looking to gain awareness. If you're looking for more storytelling, you're looking at more mid-tier type of influencers. Macro influencers provide a great level of engagement. That's influencers that have between 10 and 100,000 followers. But those nano influencers are great for conversion. So these are people that are either just starting out, becoming an influencer, or may not be an official influencer, but just get a lot of engagement with a very smaller amount of followers that can ultimately help amplify and convert people to your brand or offering. All right. So you guys down for a challenge? Right. And what I want to do is I'm going to look at the chat section here, and I want to go over some specific challenges, social media challenges, that to see if you guys are familiar with it. Okay. So in the chat section, if you know this challenge, and I'm going to see who is really engaged on social media, see if you guys know this challenge. So put it in the chat section what this challenge is. And I'll give you a couple hints here, okay, as things start to roll in. One is this is a song. It's a popular song, and it was a song by a female rap artist. Okay, song by a female rap artist. And that rap artist's name is Megan. And this is the Savage challenge, right? This is a Savage challenge. So this is a challenge that went highly viral, had a lot of virality with regard to this challenge and people participating in it. All right. Have another one. This is another challenge here. It was popular. And basically, the challenge focused on showcasing someone that was dressed down and they get glammed up. So if you know this challenge, go ahead and put it in the chat section right now. This is the Don't Rush challenge. Don't Rush. It's also the name of a song as well. I believe an Afrobeat song. It's pretty popular. I'm sure you guys may know this one. I know you know who that person is. Obviously, it's Oprah, right? But this challenge, go ahead and put it in the chat section. I believe more of you guys should probably know this challenge here. It's the ice bucket, the ALS ice bucket challenge. All right. So what's important here to note is when you focus on generating some virality in the influencer space, you want to focus on taking audiences that overlap, or taking influencers that have audiences that overlap. And once you focus on that audience overlap, then you'll be able to do things such as create these viral moments, these challenges that would help ultimately amplify your brand. This is something that you can do as for your clients, as an example, when looking to amplify their product offering on in the social media space. All right. So here's what to focus on. You focus on building your brand authority. You ultimately want to understand who your customer base has as an influencer, who influences their decisions. And this may not be directly a traditional influencer, but it could be someone with influence or person of influence. You also want to map your influencer type with your overarching goal. So if you have a goal of creating more awareness, you want to have focus on macro influencers. If you want to have more focus on conversions, the recommendation would be to focus on nano influencers with a very, very small amount or a smaller amount of following. All right. And then look at the audience overlap when creating some type of virality or challenge. That would be certainly helpful when amplifying your audiences, your clients, or your brand. All right. Lastly, I'm going to wrap up with email marketing. I'm going to breeze through here. This is something that obviously is a channel that we can certainly focus on when helping to amplify and engaging with our target audience. Here is an AI prompt that you can use when developing a weekly newsletter. So you can certainly use AI to help develop that weekly newsletter. Your approach to this should be making sure that you have a benchmark, an industry benchmark, to get a good idea of what are the open rates for your industry, so you can make sure that you're meeting or exceeding those open rates, click through, so on and so forth. And of course, focusing on personalization with regard to your email marketing campaigns. Suggest creating a list, a spreadsheet to track the open rates compared to the industry benchmarks, just to that you are aligned with that and have a good understanding of the engagement rates in your industry for email. Here is a list of engagement rates over the past couple years that you can check. You can see the growth of email being a strong channel in which for you to engage. And here's some things that ultimately you should focus on with regard to benchmarking, as I mentioned earlier, and then personalization when it comes to the type of emails that you're sending to your target audience as well. One tool that we use is Upsurge CRM. We use that to provide a lot of AI creation for email newsletters, as well as automation that would help with personalization based upon triggers and behaviors of users. All right, so to wrap it up, I know we're getting close to time here. We talked about digital branding and what exactly your digital brand is, your identity, visibility, and credibility in the space, and how to leverage all of the channels in order to help lift your brand authority. We talked about SEO, focusing on EEAT and strategizing for EEAT when creating content. We talked about social media and focusing on telling your brand story, focusing on updating your brand voice to have engagements that are more personal, so you can increase the organic reach, as well as understanding the algorithms in the space, so that you can create content that feed into the algorithm, so algorithm can further reward you for doing those types of engagements. In paid media, using micro moments, focus on those micro moments when implementing a paid media campaign. Influencer marketing, focusing on people that have influence of your target audience and helping to create a relationship with strategic partners that could help to also amplify your offering as well. And email marketing, focusing on personalization and automation with regard to your email marketing. All of these things are strategies and channels that will help you to build your brand authority in the digital space. And so what I want to do is provide more information for you guys to help partner up. And this is an opportunity. We are looking for partners. And you can go ahead and scan that QR code there. It'll take you right to our partnership page. But we have mutually beneficial partnerships for clients that we either are at capacity or may need some assistance with. And also, if you need some assistance with other things, if you're providing SEO but may want social media or may have clients that need other services, we certainly can look to partner up there. Feel free to check out any of our resources below our website, blog, newsletter, or feel free to send me an email as well. And so I know this went over a little bit, but for those of you who actually stayed, you're going to be happy you stayed. Here's the reason. I'm going to have a gift for you just for staying on the call here. If you email me, the first 5 people that emails me, I'm going to give them a lifetime media card. Essentially, this media card is a digital business card that you can fully personalize with your branding. If you have a video or social media, so on and so forth, it'll all be there in your in your media card there. So the first 5 people that go ahead and email me right now, juntae@digitaldelane.com, I will give you access just for staying on and listening to me rant on my soapbox. All right. So I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, feel free to tag me on social media or send me an email or give me a call, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you guys have. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Thank you very much for covering in so much details all these tactics around digital branding. That was great. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
And we will have our Q&A session now. I see that there are some interesting questions in chat, so we will take them one by one.
Sure.
Are you ready? Okay. So first question is from Alfred. How do you make sure using AI to plan your content doesn't strip away the unique personality of your brand?
Yes. And so I think it all starts with the prompts that you use. So as long as you tell it exactly how you want to sound, what's important to you, what not to say, what to focus on, you'll further be able to make sure that the AI produces something that's aligned with your brand voice.
Nice. That's very precise. Another one from Sab. How can AI help boost user engagement that ultimately helps improve SEO and building brand authority?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, simply because you're able to use AI to learn more about your target audience. And by learning more about your target audience, their wants, their needs, their challenges, what keeps them up at night, you ultimately would be able to increase your engagements because the information or the content is more personalized. It speaks directly to them, and you're able to use AI to learn more about them when creating content.
Great. Thank you a lot for the answer.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be quick here because we have several more minutes, but we want to cover the questions. So Aaron, first of all, thanks you for the presentation. And then he wants to know how realistic it is to get backlinks from AI-generated content. Do established brands have it easier due to the authority?
That's a great question. So I think so. I think established brands do have a little bit easier because you already have that brand equity, if you will, in the eyes of Google with regard to your content, right? So naturally, someone that is creating a great deal of AI content that has been established in the space is certainly going to have more authority with regard to search results than someone who is just starting out and creating AI content. But I would be remiss, though, to say that my standpoint with regard to AI content is to use AI to help with the structure and information in the content piece without creating the content word for word, because ultimately we still don't know what how Google is going to potentially reward or penalize people that are using AI content, or if they're not penalizing the content that they believe is not AI is probably going to rise to the top. So as of right now, because AI I believe is so new but moving very very quickly, focus on using AI as a foundation for your content, and don't use it as a single resource, but use it as a foundation for content building.
That's a great piece of advice. Thanks a lot. I
Mhm.
believe so too. Okay, Matt is asking, how do you track the payoff of bringing AI into your SEO and content strategies, especially when it comes to building up your brand?
The payoff. So I think ultimately you're speaking of ROI, right? When using AI to create content. So first, I would focus on the logistics, right? Is it saving you time when creating content? Are you able to create content faster, right? So this ultimately is going to be some initial payoffs. You are able to also have the AI generate more ideas about the type of content. So certainly, if you ever come across writer's block as an example, when you really just don't know what type of content to create or you're just stuck, AI can certainly assist with that. So by sheer virtue of it helping with the logistics, it can certainly pay off.
Great answer, and a great question to wrap up. Again, thanks very much for the presentation. Really insightful, very much recommendations for us to work on to build our digital brands. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
And before moving to the next topic, I would like to mention our exclusive offer for agencies called Agency Catalog. It is only available for the people who are using our agency pack. And that's the opportunity for you to get listed among the high quality and reliable businesses. And that will give you much benefits like generating quality leads, showcase your expertise, and of course, enhance your credibility. So by QR code, you will be able to fill out the form and get a chance to get listed in the agency catalog by SEO ranking. And the next topic is maximizing client lifetime value with advanced SEO strategies. And I'm happy to present our next speaker, Annika Haataja, SEO Director at Seeker Digital. Annika, welcome. We're glad to have you here today.
Here we go. Apologies for the delay, guys. Now we are ready to go. So yeah, like I said, talking about maximizing customer lifetime value, I'm very much focused on SEO strategies specifically. I've already introduced myself, but just very quickly, as I mentioned, working for Seeker Digital, we probably are part of the group of agencies where, especially after COVID and generally the economic issues that different countries have been having, most of us have probably experienced some interesting situations where perhaps client budgets have been reduced, demands are getting higher, contracts are shortening. So I'm very eager to talk about just generally client lifetime value and how we can boost it, and what strategies are the most efficient ones to execute. So we'll start by just going to basics with customer lifetime value, how we can measure it. Also looking at when measuring CLV is important. We're going to move on to a couple of core approaches that SEO agencies and teams can take to maximize customer lifetime value, from advanced strategies and some high value SEO projects as well. And then we'll finish off with a couple of nice surprise and delight tactics that you can add as an extra value for your customers. So there's a lot to cover. Let's kick it off with what is CLV? What is customer lifetime value? I'm sure a lot of you have heard about customer lifetime value before. The most simple definition is how much revenue a customer will be bringing you during your partnership with them. There's an actual formula for it as well, which you can calculate by average monthly revenue by client times the average client lifespan in months. Now, when we're measuring CLV, the most common metric we'll be looking at on an agency level is the total revenue that the client is bringing to your agency. So you really want to continuously monitor this metric. You probably want to review both your past and current clients just to see some different trends. Perhaps you want to rate your clients based on this metric. So who's at the top, who's at the bottom, what are the main differences between these clients? It might be the business size, it might be specific industry. So really understanding who are at the sort of top level. You can take learnings to your future sales strategies as well as your renewal strategies as well. Other core metric, of course, is client lifespan in general. So you really want to understand what's the average lifespan for a client in your agency. So again, reviewing who are the longest serving clients at your company, perhaps the types of clients that seem to churn quite quickly, and taking some learnings from those, understanding the trends. And sometimes you might find really interesting opportunities, especially if you review the clients that tend to stay a very long time, but they might have quite a low budget, and therefore their total CLV is perhaps lower than average, even though you might be working together for years and years. They are often the biggest opportunity for you to find some CLV boosting tactics as well. And then another quite core metric that you definitely want to measure is the client acquisition cost. So understanding what are the total costs when it comes to marketing and sales per client is really good to understand some averages here. For example, how long does your proposal period take, creating the proposals, how long is the whole pitch process, cost of software, etc. So effectively, you want to measure how much does it cost to convert a client versus what they bring to your business. And often it might be something that we learn in hindsight, but the more often we monitor these metrics and measure them, we might be able to draw some conclusions of similarities, especially when it comes to client businesses, so that you can forecast a little bit in terms of what size contract would you need to sell to that specific client to actually make it worth the client lifetime value. So these are the core metrics, but you might want to look at additional metrics as well in a slightly more granular level. So for example, total contract values. So it might be interesting, especially from like comparison point of view, again, reviewing what are the highest value contracts that you have, what are the specific elements that make them like good value. Perhaps you get sign off on contracts that have better terms. Maybe the scope was more detailed. So you really want to understand how can you elevate your sort of lower value contracts to that same level. Also, client concentration is quite important. So you want to understand what's the percentage of the total revenue that you get from one client or one client contributes to your business. So you want to understand what risks there would be if a high level client would, for example, terminate their contract. There's some benchmarks in different industries. Obviously, every agency is very different. Some benchmarks say that one client shouldn't contribute more than 10 or 15% of your revenue. You might want to look at your top 3 or top 5 clients. Do they go over 50% or 60%? So it's very much sort of monitoring and managing the risk. One good benchmark could also be the contract type. So how many retainers do you have versus project work as well? And then the final metric that we'd like to measure on a sort of more granular level is the average fee income per client. This is more around perhaps the sort of monthly resource allocation. So although you might have a long-term client that the total value is high, perhaps they've gradually reduced their budget over the years or the months, and now when you compare it to your other clients, they might be on a sort of lower scale, especially when it comes to your average monthly fee income from them. So it's really important to know, especially from resource allocation point of view, is there any value of over delivering? Perhaps for certain clients there isn't. So it might help your team to understand where the priorities really lie on a monthly basis. Now, we now know kind of all the metrics that are important for lifetime value. When do we normally measure these, or when is it important? Obviously, the first situation is probably that comes to everybody's mind is renewals. When there's a customer renewal, you really want to keep that client. If not even just renew, but upsell, perhaps cross-sell. We're also looking at metrics that are important for new business. So obviously, when we're converting a new client, we're hoping that they would stay for a long time. And there are some specific strategies that we're going to be talking about today, which can perhaps help with that. And generally, obviously, looking at reviewing your department profitability, the sectors that you target, and of course, also, are there any specific clients that unbalance your current revenue? So the benefits really, when we're looking at customer lifetime values, smarter client acquisition is probably the most important one. So on paper, you might have a specific ICP that you know is your target audience. But when you start looking at these metrics and actually measuring the value that you get from your current ideal customer profile, perhaps you need to change that, or it's more about validating who you really should be targeting. You also want to obviously allocate resources correctly. Not all clients should get the same level of service. So again, understanding what is the value that you're gaining. And of course, the retention strategies as well. It's good to learn from the higher CLV clients to try to reduce churn across the board as well. Now we're going more to the practical part. So there's a specific process that you can follow when you are trying to boost CLV. Initially, you want to define the specific metrics and, of course, understand what the goals are when it comes to renewals and new business. So you don't want to necessarily blindly to sell strategies that don't improve your overall profitability and therefore perhaps accidentally increase the cost of acquisition. So definitely understanding what good looks like is the first start. Then you want to start analyzing your current client portfolio and the ICP, like we mentioned earlier. So for example, if your client could deliver something that you're going to propose, if they could do it in-house cheaper and quicker, then that's not going to be the right solution for them. So you want to be able to tailor your solutions to the right clients. And once the initial prep work is done, you can start exploring new strategies you can propose through the advanced SEO strategies that we'll talk about today. But you can also move on to step 4, which is to fill in any sort of more like gaps in the revenue in addition to, or perhaps aside of the strategies, depending on what seems to be more suitable for that time. So if we start by defining the metrics, so essentially you want to benchmark your CLV. So you want to determine what good looks like. And the first point of call is often we can look at historical data, understand what good looks like in terms of lifetime value, total revenue from a client, and that will change in time as we're going through situations like COVID and economic shifts. The numbers won't look the same, so you really want to sort of balance it out correctly. And it's effectively looking at the different metrics that we went through earlier and put it into practice, and establishing benchmarks also perhaps on an industry level. So understanding if you're targeting, say, the SaaS industry, what is a good CLV for the SaaS industry within your agency? You can also look at sort of if you know perhaps other agency owners or people working in other agencies, trying to benchmark your sort of average revenue per client, and perhaps the life cycle as well to other agencies. There's also some benchmarking reports that are available to review. And yeah, effectively, you want to understand on a client level, perhaps industry level, and then overall agency level, what KPIs you should be setting. So once you know what you're measuring and what good looks like, you want to understand your current client situation. And when we're talking about skills gap, we effectively want to find something that you can add value to the client. So you can go beyond just SEO skills. You might not even have an SEO in your client team. So think about the teams that might be involved in your work from the client side, and understand how you can either work together or how you can support them better. So not only looking at the sort of skills gap, but also, perhaps knowledge sharing and cooperating as well. So that's when you can actually bring true value for the client. So once you've established what the client really needs and what good looks like for your agency, then you can start identifying the new strategies for you to propose. So the idea with the advanced strategies specifically is that you want to sell something new and something long-term, and perhaps something outside of your core SEO solution. So when we're talking about boosting CLV, the first thing that often comes to mind is, well, we'll just increase our rates and make it more expensive. But you can definitely do that, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Even if your profitability might be going down because of higher costs, maybe higher operational costs, the automatic answer might not always be to increase rates. It doesn't happen overnight, and it can be difficult to justify for the client. It can also be quite hard to increase the CLV by just increasing the scale of the work, so doing more of what you're already doing. Again, you can try to do that, but perhaps, especially if it's a long-term client, when clients get comfortable, it's really hard to justify, oh, let's do more of this, unless if you have really great forecasts or ROI reports that you can share. Often they're just happy to keep it as it is. And also finally, for especially higher value clients, if we're talking about those like top 3, top 5 clients, if we leave them to sort of roll over in a month, that could be really risky. So the benefits of looking at advanced strategies as a selling point, either on top of your existing retainer or as a perhaps new separate retainer, you can really sell something a bit more advanced. That means you stand out from the competition. You're there to build a long-term solution for your client, and you can much easier, therefore, justify some premium pricing and higher prices. And this is work that doesn't really have to end, so it can last for months or even years, something that is future-proof as well. Obviously, the downside is that often for the long-term advanced work, procurement can take a long time, and it can be difficult to justify for the client, especially if the stakeholders don't really understand it, because SEO as a basic service can be difficult to understand. So client education is really important here. So being able to provide some additional resources, extra time, extra collaboration can really help to actually get them to convert. I've listed a few example strategies to kind of give you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about here. So first example is more sort of content focused. So your client might be in a situation where they are expanding to a new product line or perhaps a new service, and they want to be ranking very well for that. So effectively what you can be proposing here is to build their topical authority. And when you're doing that from scratch, most likely, that takes time. It's a lot of effort. It's a large scale production. And this is something that includes multiple steps. One being obviously research, and then strategy, and then production. So it's a really good example of a long-term strategy. Another would be, especially very recently, has been a big topic around algorithm recoveries. So if your client has been hit by any of the recent updates, for example, HDU or the March update, hopefully not while working with you though, a recovery program would be quite a good idea, because again, even just identifying the reason for the manual action or the drop in visibility it can be quite a big task. And after that, you need to build a strategy and again, execution before the next update. And hopefully by that time, you would have built a great relationship and they would have been already impressed. The visibility increases and you might be able to sell another retainer. Digital PR hero campaigns can be great strategy to sell, especially because they can span for months. We've actually had some clients that we have campaigns that run for like now 2 years. So if you find a topic that, especially if it's something that can be updated every year, maybe some stats, and you can redo it forever, and you can find different angles, you can increase the scope, perhaps target different markets. So it's a really good example of, again, there's so many steps that you need to take, and by just the research, production, creation, asset creation, that already spans for a long time, and then the actual outreach and new angles can actually increase the value and the sort of retainer length as well. And then finally, the other example around sort of more brand SEO, reputation management. Again, the brand never stops, moving forward. You can always help your client build their brand profile, whether it's through, digital PR, perhaps reviews management, etc. So that can be something that is very much ongoing work and very topical, and something that doesn't really go out of style. Now, when we're talking about selling advanced strategies, the assumption is that technically there isn't anything operationally preventing you from selling the advanced strategy. So you have great client relationships, your project management works well, your sales process works smoothly. So if you have any issues around those areas, and perhaps some areas that your team wants to develop in, you might want to make sure you fix those first before you create more stress for yourself and the team by moving on to new services. Now, I also promised to talk about more sort of project work, especially now when, like I said earlier, client budgets can be perhaps scrutinized a bit more. It feels risky for clients to sign on for years and years and years. So therefore, one good example of work to be sold would be sort of more high-value SEO projects. So the idea of these are that although when we're talking about lifetime value, often we talk about length of a contract. But the good thing about this sort of more high-value project is that you can price them quite high in the short term. So although we could talk about perhaps even 3-month SEO work, it can be in total higher value than a low budget 6-month retainer, for example. And the great thing about projects is that you can do many at the same time, or you can add them on top of your existing client retainer, which automatically boosts CLV very nicely. You can also create very good processes, which means that you can do these projects all over again, which then makes it quicker and easier and cheaper for you to set up. And often when we're talking about projects, the expectations are perhaps more delivery focused rather than results focused, especially if we have great clients who are educated well in SEO. They would know that in 3 months, you won't get many results, especially if we're starting from scratch. So it gives you a bit of time to build that relationship, impress them with great work, and then in the end, you can try to upsell again. So the real benefits of the sort of high value project is that often sign off will be slightly quicker because there's no risk element when it comes to length of the contract. And you might be bringing in some new exciting work for the team to get motivated in. And also, if you wanted to launch a new service, it might be less risky to do it in a project rather than sort of committing to a long-term contract with the client. Of course, when we're talking about projects, and especially sort of SEO-focused projects, it can be quite easy for the team to over-deliver, especially when we're trying to impress a client. We've got a short space of time to do that. There's also often quite a lot of admin involved compared to the actual period of time that the client will be guaranteed to stay with us, and often obviously tight deadlines as well, which can be quite stressful for the team. So it's really important to make sure that you've got the right workflows and processes in place. And as I said before, once you've done the project once, the learnings that you can take will make it cheaper for the next client to enjoy. Now, when we're talking about high-value SEO projects, it might be a bit of what does it mean? So the idea is that we're thinking outside of the SEO box. We're not just doing a tech audit. We're not just doing a couple of editorial links. It's something that is very focused on the user and the user journey. Often, what I would say the results are focused on is more conversion related rather than rankings. The rankings might come indirectly, but it's very much focused on something that will improve an organic user's experience, whether it's on your site or off-site perhaps. So it is usually something that has a beginning and an end. So therefore it's a project, but there's obviously always a potential to continue on some capacity after the project finishes. So I've got a couple of examples of these types of projects and a few that we've also done with our clients. One being UX innovations. I struggle to kind of think of a name for that. And when we're talking about this, we're not necessarily talking about redesigning a site or executing CRO. It's more about how can you make the experience for the user better and therefore perhaps increase organic conversions. So one example could be to migrate your client's blog into a very well-structured content hub. That includes a lot of different steps within it, but once it's been launched, that content already exists. You don't necessarily need to continue working on it, except if you want to. So that's an example of quite technical, perhaps design, creative heavy projects that will eventually have some SEO value as well. Or perhaps you want to start personalizing the user journey. Maybe when they land on a homepage, they click on certain CTA, they will go on a personalized journey, which another user wouldn't see. So there's a few different elements that you can do when we're talking about UX and improving conversions. You can implement some more tech on your client side. There's so many AI APIs now, so you can utilize AI, perhaps do more immersive content, interactive content as well, like calculators or games, and therefore, again, increase engagement on the page. Then if we're talking about sort of content strategies, content production, often even bigger brands, our clients might not actually have content guidelines. So SOPs or brand messaging, tone of voice documents, etc. And that's something that you can do as a one-off project and therefore hand it over to the client and then have your team utilize it if you do the client content production yourself. And then last example would be creating a thought leadership content strategy for the client. So again, not necessarily just copy for their website, but things like podcasts and webinars and video series, etc. And again, the next stage could be the implementation itself. I've got a couple of examples, like real life examples of these. So this is from Calendly's website. I don't know if you've been on their website recently, but their resource section is great. And what they do is they structure it very well for the user to be able to find the kind of content that they're interested in. They're repurposing content for different formats. And yeah, very much sort of focus on that topical authority building as well. The other example I found was on Shopify's site. So they use AI or probably machine learning more so to provide a tool which gives you a great business name. So it basically, you give some keywords in it and it generates like relevant business names so that you can use them for your domain, which in itself is already great for user engagement, but it can also be a great asset for like digital PR or editorial link building. Again, when we're talking about trying to sell high-value SEO projects, there's some considerations, mainly around sort of focusing on innovation and collaboration with your client. Perhaps freelancers, you might need to collaborate with other agencies. You might have a project that you don't have all the skills internally in your agency, which is fine, especially for the services that you might want to trial first. And very much, again, requires very strong project management, making sure that you've got the workflow set up. And sometimes you might benefit from having a retainer in the background with the client so that you get best of both worlds by having sort of shorter deadlines, but also long-term revenue from the same client. Now we're going to finish off with a couple of surprise and delight tactics. I've divided these into two, so whether existing clients or new clients, so within the sales process. With existing clients, if you want to just make them happy, bring them some extra value, especially the high CLV ones, you might want to give them some free audits, something that is going to be beneficial for them, but also hopefully it doesn't take too long for your team to create. Whether it's audits, but also perhaps sharing some resources. Maybe you've written some white papers that you want to give them, first access. But generally, providing that extra value, nurturing the relationship, and yeah, beyond anything that you're doing on a day-to-day, essentially. And then with new clients, just to get your relationship in a good start, you could provide some proof of concept projects initially, sort of maybe trial campaign for digital PR, especially if they've never done digital PR before. Not necessarily for free, but again, more shorter, more flexible, perhaps slightly lower cost. And especially if the client has already converted, why not start the relationship with a free strategy session or workshop or brainstorming with the client, just to bring that extra value from the start of the relationship. Now, I'm going to leave you with a couple of final thoughts. Just going back to basics when it comes to SEO sales, trying to focus on the genuine need of the client. What extra value can you really bring? Obviously, we're often talking about ROI, but also just generally, what are also the pain points that you're trying to fix with your solution, rather than here's some hours that we'll spend on your account. This is more about what kind of value you can actually bring to the whole team. So that's it. That's everything I wanted to cover today.
Find Annika on her social media and continue the discussion of these topics, which are very hot for the industry right now. Annika, thanks a lot for the insights. That was great.
Thank you so much. And apologies for the tech issues.
No problem at all.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. And before moving forward, a quick mention of SEO Ranking free trial. If you haven't registered a free trial now, it's high time you do it today with the QR code that you see on the screen or with the links we provide you. And you can experience all of the toolset with competitive research, website audit, keyword rank tracker, and much more on our platform. And one quick mention, but very important one, once you register, please provide your business email, and that's how you ensure you get the expanded trial with expanded limits and much more benefits versus when you are registering with your personal email. So don't forget to provide the business email when you register the trial. And we are moving forward with our next topic, mastering XPath for SEO, data extraction techniques. And we welcome David Gossage, SEO manager at Click Consult. David, nice having you today. Please introduce yourself and the stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. My name is David Gossage. I'm an SEO manager for an agency called Click Consult. I primarily work on technical SEO, and I love working on e-commerce sites. So what I'll do, I'll take it back to the year 2016, that far away land, which depressingly is 8 years ago now. And I was like a lot younger, I was a lot greener in the industry, and I was in charge of quite a large website migration. So it was an e-commerce site of about 10,000 products. And one of the tasks that I had to do was to make sure that all of the content that was on the old site is present on the new site, which was quite a daunting task when you're talking like over 10,000 pages. And when I was trying to figure out how to do that, my boss at the time says, "Why don't you use custom extraction?" And I was like, "Well, what's one of them?" And when he showed me, like, my mind was blown. The idea that I can get any that I can do check thousands of pages in one go was like was really something. So I made it my mission at the time to learn everything there is to know about them and become the expert. So I'm here today to share that with you. Hang on. I'm on the wrong. Here we go. So a couple of things to bear in mind. So what you need is some really basic HTML knowledge. And when I say basic, I'm talking like, what is an HTML tag? If you can master that, then you'll be able to do the rest. I'm going to be going through this quite fast, so the deck will be shared at the end by the SE ranking team, so you can put your notepad away. And for now, I just want you to understand the fundamentals, and once you've learnt them, I'll also share a cheat sheet with you as well. And I will be focusing on Screaming Frog. There are other scraping tools available, but Screaming Frog is the most popular, so I'm going to focus on that one. So I'll start off with the at the very beginning, and that is what is a custom extraction. So according to Screaming Frog, a custom extraction allows you to scrape any data from the HTML of a web page using XPath or regex. And the translation of that is you can get any piece of information from any web page in bulk, which is a really powerful tool if you know how to use it correctly. And there's a number of tools they can use for this. So as I mentioned, there is a Screaming Frog. You can do it in Google Sheets, or you can even create your own tool if you've got skills or if you know how to use ChatGPT. But for now, let's look at Screaming Frog. So if you want to do a custom extraction, just go into Configuration, Custom, and then Custom Extraction. And then in click Add, and then add your XPath in here. And then when you go to your, when you run your crawl, go to the Custom Extraction tab, and on the right-hand side is all of the custom extraction results. So this, in this example, I've decided to do an extraction of all the H1 headings. Although Screaming Frog does have its own built-in extraction. So if you see here, you got your title, you got your meta description, you got your H1, and these are these all work in exactly the same way. It's just that Screaming Frog has already pre-programmed them in. But you can do your own. I'll go through some examples now. You can also do it in Google Sheets. So the import XML formula is a built-in formula within Google Sheets. So here's an example of one. So you just type in equals import XML, put your URL or the cell which has your URL in it, and then do //h1 or whatever you want your XPath to be. And it will pull in the data directly into your spreadsheet. So here's an example of one that I made earlier. So it's just a real time saver if you're got your head buried in spreadsheets. Now there's two ways they can do an extraction. Well, there's other ways, but I'll focus on these two. There's XPath and there's regex, and regex tends to be a bit more popular. So I'll give you an example here. So you've got a snippet of HTML and you want to extract the contents of this H1 tag. And all you do is that you replace the text that you want to extract with $? Easy as that. However, if you then start to add some complexities in there, so say if I put a class in the H1 tag, if I put a line break in there, if I put some white space in there, suddenly that regex starts to look like this, and it gets very complicated very quickly. However, to do the same extraction in XPath is this. So, as mentioned, regex tends to be more popular because the barrier to entry for learning is a lot lower. However, it does get complicated very quickly. So once you get past the basics, it becomes very difficult to use. However, it does have its uses. So if you're wanting to extract a specific part of your schema, or if you're or if there's a specific text snippet, it does come in really useful for that. XPath, it can be more difficult to get your head around the basics, but once you've learned those basics, it's a lot easier to use for more complicated queries, and it's perfect for extracting any the contents of any HTML tag. So I'm going to start off with an example. And here is a title tag, and this title tag is within the head tag, and that is also within the HTML tag. So the structure of that tag is HTML head title. So all you do, put a slash in between them. And if you put this within into Screaming Frog as custom extraction, it will actually extract the title of every page. Easy as that. However, we can make it easier. So rather than having to know the full HTML structure of every tag on your page, you can just replace it with a double slash, and that will search the entire document for any title tags. And as a little pro tip, if you want to test this, you can go into your Chrome DevTools. So just right click and on your web page and click inspect. And then if you do a search using Control F and you put your XPath in there, it will search your source code for that XPath, so you can test your XPath before you do any crawling. And that's it. You learn how to use XPath now. It's nice and easy. However, most cases are not that simple. So here we have we want to extract the contents of a div, but there's on this random example of a page that I was looking at, there are 500 divs. So therefore, it's just not feasible to go as basic as in the previous slides. And when you start to look at, this is the source code of a relatively simple page, and it can very quickly get overwhelming very fast. So there's a few solutions for this. The first solution is you can go into your Chrome DevTools, as I mentioned earlier, and if you right-click on the HTML that you want to extract, click copy and then copy XPath, it will generate the XPath for you that they can then put into Screaming Frog or your crawler of choice and do the extraction for you. So here's a random example of a web page that I did this for. So this one was curries.co.uk. And this is the example of the XPath. Now, to break it down what this means, this is the fourth div tag within the first div tag, within the first div tag, within the fifth div tag, within the second div tag, within the first div tag, within anything with an ID of product search results. And it's just horrible. Yeah, so it's impossible to debug. It's a complete mess, and anyone who's starting off will see that and go, well, I'm not going to learn that. It's just horrific to use. There is a solution B, and this is Screaming Frog has its own built-in XPath generator. Now, if you're interested to learn, this is really good. There are some restrictions, and it can be a little bit slow, but it's quite a powerful and impressive tool. However, my preferred method is to target the HTML tag attributes. So you might be asking, what is an attribute? One of the more common examples that you'll come across is a class, and the attribute is basically the little bit that goes within an HTML tag. Is the simplest way to explain it. And here's some attribute types that some of you may be familiar with. So you've got your classes. You might have a nofollow attribute within a link, or you've got your link address as well. And there's all sorts of attributes, but these are some of the common ones. And yeah, so if we look at the structure of this HTML tag, so you got your tag type, which is div, then you got your attribute type here, which is class, and then you got your attribute value here, which is page result count in this example. So what we can then do is that we can turn this into an XPath, and there's two ways to do this. Now, I call these exact match and phrase match because I work in digital marketing. It's kind of ingrained into me. So we'll have a look at the exact match example first. So you start off with your / div, and as I explained before, this will search the entire document for every single div tag that's in your HTML. And then you open your square brackets to @class equals page result count, and this will detect any HTML div tags where the class equals page result count. So in this example, it will extract the contents of this tag. Solution 2 is what I would call phrase match. And again, you don't have to remember the exact syntax. You just have to remember that it is possible, because I will be sharing this at the end. But in this example, you can use a contains function, and in this example, we want to search for //div for every div within a document, and then narrow it down to any div that contains a class and page result count. Now, here's 3 examples of classes that it will detect, and so it will detect examples like in the previous one. However, it will also detect if there are multiple classes, multiple values within a class, and it will also detect if the class if the class value contains page result count. So for example, it's got -info at the end as one example. So you do need to be careful, because you may end up extracting tags that you didn't intend to, which is why I prefer the exact match, because you have more control over it. But this is useful in examples where you don't have that level of a granularity on your page. Now, sometimes the HTML tag that you're trying to extract won't have a class, or it won't have any attributes at all. So say in this example, I want to extract the anchor text of this link. Now, there's nothing within the A tag that is unique. So I will then want to target the HTML tag that it's contained within, so its parent element. So here I've got your so again, we start off with a //div, search for every div where the class equals target in this example, and then at the end you just put /a, and this will extract the anchor text of every link that appears within this div. However, sometimes it's not that simple. So if you've got some, if you've identified the HTML tag that you want to extract, and its parent tag doesn't contain anything unique either, and its parent tag isn't unique, so then you have to go a little bit higher up. So simply putting /a at the end won't work, but you can use // and then what this will do, it will search everything within that parent HTML tag for, in this example, /a. So the difference between a single slash and a double slash. So a single slash will only extract direct child elements of the HTML tag that you're specifying, and it will not extract any child elements. Whereas a double slash will extract all child elements, regardless of how far buried they are. So it can be really good for cluttered code. But we can go a little bit further. So we can also extract attribute values. So again, we've gone back to this list. So we've got your nofollow attributes, you've got your class names, you've got your link URLs. But say in this example, we want to get the alt text of every image on a page, and we want to get the image URLs for every image on a page. So again, we do //div at class equals class name, and then we do /img to look for any image tags within that class, and then at the end we just put @alt or @src. So alt is the alt text and src is the link URL. So then you can extract like really deep information there. Or sometimes there may be like multiple divs with the same class. So an example might be if you've got a list of reviews, but you're only interested in the first review, or you might be only interested in the second review or the third review on the page. So in this example, all you do is you put your XPath in brackets, and then at the end have some square brackets with 1, 2, or whichever number of the type that you want to extract. We also have functions as well. So I mentioned before about the contains function, but there's a couple of others as well that come in really useful. So count does what it says on the tin. If you want to know how many times a particular HTML tag is present on a page, you just put count around it. And so rather than extracting the contents of the div, it'll just tell you how many times it appears. We've got normalized space. So if you use Excel, you might be familiar with the trim function, and it just removes any white space that is around the text that you're trying to extract. Text is also a function. So in this example, I want to look for any pages that contain lorem ipsum. So I'll do //p to look for any p tag in HTML, and I'll do contains text and lorem ipsum. As simple as that. Then we also got operators. The two which I'll go through are and or, but you can also do calculations, so you can add up the values of certain XPath. Now, I won't go into that one, but that's something to look into in spare time if you're that way inclined. So, and in this example, say if your div has say if your div class has multiple values. So in this example, it's got class 1 and a class 2, and we only want to match attributes where both of those are present. So you can do / div contains class and then class 1. Oh, got a typo though. Should be closing the speech marks, but no, never mind. And contains class in class 2, and then that will only extract the contents of a div where both of these class values are present. Or there's the or operator as well. So say if you have a div with class equals class 1, and you got another div with class equals class 2, and you want to return the contents of either one of those divs, you can stick an or in between them. So you got / div contains class class 1 or contains class in class 2. Okay, so I appreciate I've whizzed through all of that very quickly. So I hope I've not bored you too much. But here, so I've got some examples. So in this first example, say if you want to identify any thin categories on your e-commerce site. So in this example, this particular e-commerce site has kindly said at the top of the page how many products are present. So we can do //div and class equals page result count in this example, and it will tell you how many products are in each e-commerce category. Now, sometimes this little number won't be present at the top of the page. So what you can do is find some HTML that is common for each product card. So say if your product images, for example, and then you can use the count function that I showed you earlier. So that will also work, but it will only tell you how many products present on that particular page. You can also automate your so if you're doing a website migration, you can automate your redirect mapping for your products. So most e-commerce sites will have a SKU that's present on the page. So if you can extract what that SKU is, and then do a crawl of your current site, then you do a crawl of your new site, looking for the SKU on that one. Put them both into a spreadsheet, do a VLOOKUP between them to match the URLs, and suddenly you've mapped redirects for thousands of URLs at once. You can look for any internal links. So you can, in this example, if there's an article tag, I can have a look at all the links within an article tag and see which of them are external links. Or I can have a look and see which ones are external links. And in this one, I've introduced another function called not. It does what it says on the tin. You can also have a look to see if any no-follow links are present. So in this example, I look for a /article /a for all of the links within the article, and then contains rel no-follow. And then at the end, you can even put the @href to tell you what the link address is. You can crawl a whole site and find out who the author of each article is. So say if you are targeting a particular author and you want to see what they've written in the past, to see if they'd be interested in hosting a piece of content that you've written, if it's relevant to what they've done. You can crawl the website and see which articles they've written. Now this one, so some of you may be familiar with some of these terms, and crappy AI content is something that can be that can hurt a site. So if you've got a lot of UGC on your site, for example, product reviews is a common one, and you see that people are using AI to write them, you can have a look for these. So you can see. Now this is an example; it'll be different for every website, but you can do a search for anything with class equals a review in this example and contains text equaling realm of, or world of, or fast-paced, or ever-changing, or in summary, or any other rubbish AI phrase that you see on so many sites, and especially LinkedIn as well. But what you can also do is you can stick the or operator between them and then put the whole thing within a single set of brackets. Sorry. And then you can do a single XPath that will search for all of these at once. And that's it. That's everything you need to know about XPath. So I appreciate I've whizzed through it very quickly. But as I say, we will be sharing this deck with you, and I'll be sharing a cheat sheet shortly as well. Now, the future, it wouldn't be an SEO talk in 2024 if I didn't talk about AI. In fact, as AI is going to deprecate pretty much everything I've just told you. So instead of learning the XPath for what you want to extract, what you can do instead is that you can just instruct AI to say, here's a piece of information that I want, extract it for every page. So here's an example of a list of URLs. Excuse me. And I've integrated AI into a Google Sheet, and all I've done is I've put a prompt in there that says, here's a list of URLs. For each URL, tell me who wrote it and what date was it published. And in this example, it's done a pretty good job. And then after I did this, a couple of weeks ago, Screaming Frog also released its own update, where it's also integrated ChatGPT into its crawler. So what you can do is you can put a prompt in that says, here's a list of articles, tell me who wrote it and when was it published, and it can do it for you. Now, the technology isn't quite there to do everything I've just described, but if you're a little bit nervous, it can do quite a lot. Okay, and that's it. So thank you, and I apologize for absolutely blasting through that. Now, here's a QR code. If you want to scan that with your phones, you can access the cheat sheet that I mentioned, or if you just go to seogreetings.com/cheat sheet, it will redirect you there as well. And yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, I'll hand it back over.
Thank you very much, David. That was very practical, very insightful, and special thanks for the cheat sheet that you provided. That's a great bonus for our visitors today. Okay, then we can move forward to our Q&A session. We have several questions in chat, and I'll start with the one provided by Raymond. What is your advice on making XPath queries fast and accurate, especially on big websites?
So XPath is quite fast. So I mentioned this as Screaming Frog a few times, and I mentioned that the pre-built extractions that Screaming Frog has, and they are done using XPath. It's just done pre-programmed in her back end. So if you can identify what the XPath is, it will run for every page, and it won't crawl any slower than if you run a crawl without XPath. So yeah, once you've identified what you want to extract, it's very fast.
Nice. Thanks a lot for the reply. And next one is from Roger. How do you handle XPath when your content keeps changing or updating? What are some common mistakes with using XPath for SEO, and how can they avoid them? So I think that we can break them into two parts. And the first one is...
Yeah, so I think the most common mistake is so I showed the example before where you right click on the source code and then click copy XPath, and that feeds into what you were saying about how when the content keeps changing. So if the structure of the page changes at all, then that approach won't work. And that's why I've talked about targeting the attribute values. So unless you've done a full website migration, those attribute values are going to be consistent across the site, and they're not likely to change unless the website itself changes. So once you figured out how to target, how to identify those attributes and then target them in the XPath, it's quite robust, and it should be fairly fairly break-proof.
Great answer. Thanks a lot. Very clear. And another one is from Diego. What's your go-to approach for using XPath in SEO tools to check out complex site structures?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by complex site structures. So you're talking about the HTML structure, or you're talking about the website hierarchy?
There is no specifics here. Maybe you can just pick one that you want to talk about, and if there is any clarity.
When it comes to complex HTML structure, going back to Roger's example before, if you identify the attributes that you want to target, it's quite robust. There are some examples. So sometimes you might have websites that are built mostly using Bootstrap, for example, and then when you want to do your extraction, and you see that the div that you're trying to target is called col12, and then you do a search for col12 and you see 112 examples of that in the source code. So that's where it gets messy. So I mentioned before about the operators. So you can look at AND operators. So you can look at what combinations of classes together will be more unique to the section of the page that you're trying to extract. But fortunately, these sites are quite rare. Yeah, most websites, especially if you've got a competent web developer, will have fairly common attribute values that are quite simple to understand.
Great, and I can see the comment from Diego. He's saying exactly. So I think that you've totally covered the question. Thanks a lot for that. And another one is from White. What XPath functions are indispensable for pulling out critical SEO data?
Okay, so Most of the time, I don't tend to use functions, except for contains. I think the contains function is probably the most common one that I use, but I don't tend to think of that as a function. I just think of that as part of the XPath that I use. In terms of a dedicated function, the normalized space one is can come in handy. So a website that I used to work for had the worst source code that I've ever seen in my entire life, where 90% of the HTML was just white space. So when I was doing crawls of that site, I had to use normalized space, because otherwise I'd just end up with results that were just a complete mess.
Right. I totally understand. Thanks a lot for the answer, and thanks a lot for the presentation. That was like the first, the last question in a row, and I think that if you want to know more about XPath, you can find David in social media and ask any questions that you like to ask. But for now, we will be wrapping up. So thanks a lot, David. That was great.
Thank you very much.
And before moving forward to our next topic, we've talked a lot about data extraction, and you see how time-consuming or complicated it can be. That is why we try to make it easier for you to work with data by providing the tool called Insights, where you can find keyword opportunities, check competitor dynamics, check your content quality insights, and have some actionable tips on your fingertips, just to improve your performance with SEO, to make sure that you make the most out of your SEO. So you can try Insights tool in SEO ranking. SEO ranking is all about knowledge sharing, of course. So I want to remind you that we have an academy where you can dive deeper into our very specific courses on SEO basics in general, or narrow topics with content, or how to promote your agency. Also, you can learn more about SEO ranking platform with our course SEO ranking in action. It is free for all of our users, so you're welcome to go ahead and check SEO ranking academy. Last but not least, for now, is the mention of our podcast. If you would like to stay ahead of industry trends, the name says it all. Do follow us for in-depth discussions and great actionable recommendations from industry leaders. Subscribe by the QR code, and stay tuned for our next episodes. And we are ready to start our next session, which is Advanced SEO Reporting, Tools, Tips, and Techniques. And I'm very happy to introduce Dana DiTomaso, founder and lead instructor at KP Playbook. Dana, thanks a lot for joining us. Great having you today. The stage is yours.
Thank you
Please
so much
welcome.
for having me. Thank you. It's so great to be here. Yeah, and I love that this is a day focused on agencies, because I find that at conferences, there's a mix of in-house and agency people. And while, when I'm talking to a more general audience, I try to say, this could be to your boss or this could be to your client. But the reality is that we have really different, expectations and whatnot in terms of how we communicate with clients. So today I'm hoping that I can go into that more with everybody. All right, so let's get it rolling. All right. So, if you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Dana DiTomaso. As mentioned, I'm the founder and lead instructor at Kickpoint Playbook. I'm also the president of Kickpoint, which is a digital marketing agency. I've been working in this field for 24 years. You can see all the gray hair. Honestly, it has never been harder to work in SEO than it is right now. And, of course, when we get great results for our clients in this really difficult time in SEO, we want to show them how good we're doing, right? And that can be extremely difficult to do so. So this is what I'm going to go through today. Whoops, hit the wrong button. Okay. So I'm going to start, though, with a really upbeat note. I regret to inform you that your analytics data is wrong. I mean, wrong might be overstating it a little bit. I am saying this for dramatic effect, of course, but the data that you are relying on for those reports is not accurate. And it also hasn't been accurate for quite some time. And I think this is why people got really frustrated with the transition from Universal Analytics to GA4, because they were looking at this data and saying, well, here's Universal Analytics, and it says that I have this many users and this many sessions and this many goals. And then they're over here in GA4 and they're saying, but GA4 says that I have this many users and this many sessions and this many conversions are now key events. Which one is right? And the answer was that they're both right because they were measuring data in different ways. But I think that GA4 really showed us how fragile analytics can be when it comes to measurement, and how dependent on the model that the measurement is taking can change the results that you get. And of course, the other problem with analytics as well is that it's getting worse. Google, of course, pushed off this whole third-party cookie thing again. I feel like Google's thinking, if we just keep pushing this off, people will forget we suggested in the first place, right? No, they're going to have to figure it out. But people think that because Google pushed this off, we still have third-party cookies. Everything is okay. But it's not. Tools like Safari and Opera and Brave, those browsers haven't had third-party cookies for a while. And analytics products like GA4 were already using first-party cookies and have been using first-party cookies for years. So that isn't actually the culprit here. So the question I have for you is, how many of you refuse cookies? When you visit a website, do you consent to tracking, or do you say functional only? You probably maybe turn off all tracking and you don't care. You probably are one of those people who is causing us to not have accurate analytics. And even if you say yes to tracking, how many of you use an ad blocker? You probably use an ad blocking extension in your browser. I have one right now. And if you didn't use one 5 years ago, you might be using one now. All of this makes our data increasingly more inaccurate. And I actually have a recent survey that was done just this year for Americans. 52% of Americans use an ad blocker, which is a shockingly high amount. But I have to say, based on what I see, this lines up. And especially if you work in a technical field or if you work with advertisers, 66% of us are using ad blockers. We are the problem here, right? This is just deep, deep irony when it comes to poor tracking on websites. And I got sent this great meme from Wisdom Graded. He said, I was on a rant on the Search with Candor podcast about, how we don't let ourselves be tracked, but we want to track everybody else. And of course, I use an ad blocker. You probably use an ad blocker. We are the problem. But the result of this means that you're making decisions, critical decisions about your clients, and also presenting your clients with only half of their actual data. In fact, based on my course website, kplaybook.com, Kickpoint Playbook, let me tell you what we actually see. I sell courses to digital marketers. Y'all love your ad blockers. Only half of purchases show up at all in GA4. And of that half of them are showing up attributed to direct, even when I'm sure that person must have found us via organic or ads originally. So for us, that means that only 25% of our data is actually showing up. So now that I've laid out this depressing reality of analytics in 2024, how can you demonstrate SEO impact in the reports that you create? So you might think I'm going to turn to Google and I'm going to Google SEO reporting template. And there's all these like pretty pictures of different kinds of templates that you can bring. And sure, some of these might get you somewhere a little bit, but ultimately what you bring to the table isn't data, it's insights. The data is in the tool. Your job as an agency is to bring insights to your clients, which I know can seem difficult because you're like, but I have to scale, and scaling means that I have to automate things. And I actually see a question right now about automating SEO reporting. Like, yeah, you can also automate insights, but the idea is that you build your reports in a way so that they are delivering insights. And what do I mean by an insight? And some of you might be like, yes, I know this, but just to be totally clear, because sometimes when I talk to people, especially people who are relatively new working in the agency world, there's a real distinction between bringing data and bringing an insight. So for example, you had 820 sessions last month from organic search. That isn't an insight. That's just data. Your client could have found that out themselves. They could have gone in GA4. They probably won't, but they could have. And they could have found this out themselves. They didn't need you to find that out. And when you bring that kind of insight or data to a client, What happens is you're setting yourself up as a vendor, not a consultant. And truly what builds a great agency relationship between you and your client is you presenting yourself as a consultant, someone they can go to and find out things. And more than once, in my career, many, many times when a client has switched from one agency to another, ultimately what they say in the call is, the other agency just wasn't telling me anything I didn't already know. They weren't giving me any insights. I had to go to them with questions. They weren't giving me any ideas. And this kind of reporting, which may be what you're reporting on now, is exactly the kind of data that eventually ends up souring the relationship between you and your client. Instead, presenting this kind of data is better. Trackable visitors from organic search are 28% more likely to get in touch with you. That's an insight. This says, we've looked at the data. We know that your key metric is people getting in touch with you. That is the thing that drives your business forward. And we know that people who come to the site via organic search are more likely to get in touch with you than any other channel out there. And as your SEO agency, of course, you want to make sure you're driving high quality organic search for your clients. So by saying the work that we're doing for you means that you are getting an above average amount of people coming to the site and getting in touch with you, this is an insight for the client. It's something that's a little bit harder to find in the basic reports. It's something that actually brings value to the table when you're discussing results with the client. Because ultimately, the reports that you build should answer your client's questions. And one of the most common questions a client is going to have is, am I getting my money's worth when I work with you? Right? That's what they want to know. They pay you a bunch of money, especially if you work with smaller businesses. You may be their entire marketing budget. They are placing their business, their baby, their life's work in your hands directly. And by showing them that you respect that level of trust, by answering their questions and coming to them with insights and coming to them with ideas, you can strengthen and deepen that relationship. So here's one of those reporting templates that I got when I Googled, what question is this template actually answering? And I thought about putting a big X on the slide because I don't want you to create this. I can't even remember what site I got this from. But a template like this is just like, here's a bunch of data. Here's some keyword performance. Here's some channel traffic. From an SEO perspective, for what we do, this is useful for us to know. We want to know how the keywords are performing. We want to know impressions and clicks and everything else. But from a client perspective, how do you translate this to what the client is going to see and what makes them say, wow, I am getting a lot of value from you. I'm going to work with you forever. Or I'm going to tell all my friends about you because signing referral business is way easier than signing cold business. Or I'm going to make sure that we increase our budget with you because clearly the work that you're doing is bringing in results. So let's take a little bit away from paid, which isn't doing as well as organic, and let's give that organic to you. These are the kinds of outcomes that you want from a report that is not what I'm showing on the screen right now. Because these kinds of reports really focus on output. They just vomit out statistics. Because I think as well, marketers have a bit of an insecurity issue when it comes to delivering reports. You think, oh, they're paying me all this money. And if I just give them a single page, like, are they going to see that I'm actually delivering any value? Are they going to see that I've done the work? So you think I'm going to put together a nice 20-page dashboard with some interactive graphs, and the client will realize, because we're doing all this, this huge dashboard, they must be doing good work, right? But the thing is that kind of dashboard doesn't necessarily bring insights to the client. It doesn't help the client make better decisions. It doesn't help the client see that clearly you are proving your value as your agency. And plus, the data is inaccurate, right? We've already established this. So we're showing 20 pages of essentially fairy tales of data that we hope somewhat correspond with reality. I was working with this one client who, unfortunately, this was before GA4. It was right in the transition from UA to GA4. And I was helping them move their site over to GA4. And when we put the GA4 code on the website, suddenly their visits went down by a fourth. They were like, oh my God, why do I have only 25% of the traffic that I did? Clearly your GA4 setup is wrong. And I went in and looked. And it turns out that they had the universal analytics code on their pages 4 times. So every time you visited a page on their site, it recorded 4 page views. They thought their blog was spectacular. It was only on the blog pages. Unfortunately, it was not. But it also answered a question for them, which is, well, why were we getting all these visits to the blog, but people weren't actually converting? They were, but because there was so much noise from the 4 times Universal Analytics code was on there, it wasn't showing up. And in GA4, there's a nice checkbox where you can say, ignore duplicate hits. And so that meant that GA4 was showing the more, accurate for lack of a better word, data. And that kind of client conversation is really tough to have because the client's reaction was, you've set up the tracking wrong. So instead, we went through and we discussed it. And that meant that, the last several years of reporting that this client had done had essentially been made up because it wasn't based on even close to real data. And that's a tough conversation to have. So again, as your agency, it isn't just like, oh, hey, your analytics are screwed up. Sorry, I fixed it. It's more, all right, so we know this is true. How can I help you have this conversation with your boss so you don't look bad? And that was a long conversation that we had. And I ultimately ended up, talking to their boss and saying, all right, so here's what's happened. This is really common. You're not the first people who've seen this, because that was true. It's not the first time I've seen this happen. And so we went back and we revised the reports. We cut off the traffic by, a fourth. We basically divided everything. And then we had a much more accurate year-over-year comparison to go forward. But yeah, it was a super tough conversation to have. And I think by supporting the client through that, you build a much stronger client relationship. So bit of a segue there, but that's a good example of, this is what you can do with your clients when you really have their back. So I want to think about changing up these tired old reports with some new metrics that tie what you do to the results in a much clearer fashion and sidestep the inherent inaccuracy that's found in analytics. So my question for you is, how efficient is your marketing? Efficiency is a metric that I use quite a lot. Did I make it up? I might have. I'm not sure actually where it came from. We've been using this for a few years now. But in my definition, efficiency is a measure of how efficient your marketing is, hence the name. How many people saw your stuff, and then how many people ultimately did the thing that you wanted them to do. You skip all the other funnel parts. You just go from top to bottom, and you just work with those two numbers, divide them, and there's your efficiency. And the reality is you can pick any two metrics you want for the top and the bottom. One of the common ways I measure this is by looking at reach and conversions, but really you can plug any two numbers into this. And I have some more examples further on that don't even have to be in the same data product. For example, one really common efficiency measure that we look at, and this would be for a client where we're working with them, not just on SEO, but we're working with them on ads and social as well, or we're just doing their paid team as solid and actually including them in our reporting as well. And so typically, for example, I'll look at the number of impressions that we had for all of our clients' properties across all the different places where someone could have seen our clients' stuff. And then we would look at their transactions. And for this client, let's say they have a physical store location or several physical locations. Let's just add up the number of transactions that they had both online and offline. And then all we're doing for our efficiency metric is we're taking the number of transactions and dividing it by the number of impressions. This is their efficiency. Because what I want to know is that when we do work, when we do SEO work, when we invest in new channels, when we change up their paid ads or whatever we're doing for that client, are we seeing sales go up? Because attribution, as we've already discussed, is broken. Site visits are broken. So therefore, the only real inputs that we have are, did more people see our stuff? Did more people buy our stuff? Just these two metrics that live in completely separate places that we are dividing for them. And so this is what it could look like in a chart. You can end up with a chart like this. This happens to be in Looker Studio, but it doesn't matter which tool you use. Add a trend line, and then you can see how the efficiency is changing over time. We can see, for example, that for this particular client, and this is real client data that I'm showing you, they're getting back on track after a tough winter, but they aren't quite where they were around this time last year because, the economy, in case you've missed it, is a little rough right now. So what can we do to fix that? And even though, for example, overall numbers might be up, if I looked at just their impressions and clicks, I would see that they're up. But because less people are actually converting, in this case is what we're measuring, are their number of transactions, this shows us what's really going on behind the scenes. And so, yes, of course, impressions are up overall. Transactions are up overall. But that percentage isn't quite translating as much as it used to. We aren't turning impressions into purchases at quite the same rate. So are we hitting diminishing returns? Are we not doing as much of a great job of convincing people? Is there a new campaign that isn't performing as well as it should? Maybe the client decided, you know what, I'm going to try billboards or radio ads. And that turns out is actually a waste of money after all. These are the kinds of insights that you can get from an efficiency metric. And you can try out efficiency for other metric combinations. You don't just have to stick with what I just showed you, impressions and sales. That is a really nice top level efficiency metric to look at, but it is not the only combination out there. So for example, something else we talk about is how efficient your website is when it comes to different devices. In this case, the outer donut is looking at sessions by device. The inner pie is looking at transactions by device or form fills by device or whatever your conversions happen to be. And so what I want to know, do the slices on the donut and the pie, do they match up? Are people having a difficult time with mobile, for example? There are no numbers on this chart. There are just slices of information. And so this can be a kind of chart that you show to somebody who, say, the CMO or the CEO, and they don't have to look at numbers. They can just look at this and say, hey, you know what? Our mobile is performing slightly better when it comes to conversions. That's great. Or often, for example, if you know that their website is total garbage and is doing a horrible job at converting people, especially on mobile, then what you're going to see, and what I often see, when we start working with clients with bad websites, is that blue section, that desktop is, the size, the donut, it looks like the way it is, but that mobile slice is significantly smaller than what you see in this actual chart. And this is the one chart that you can use to get a budget for a redesign. It has exactly 0 numbers on it. Instead, they are visually looking at this. And I think as well that as SEOs, we work a lot with data. We use spreadsheets all the time. We're used to data in tabular format, but other people who are not us do not enjoy looking at tables. So by thinking about how can I present this data in a different way, pie charts, people make fun of them, but they are useful for these kinds of things where we're visually looking and seeing, do the slices match up? Anyone can look at this and draw an insight from it. You don't have to be technical. You don't have to use technical words. And when we report on these kinds of things, and when we include these reports to clients, you'll see on the screen right now, there's actually a real screenshot from one of our reports. We have what we call microcopy. We're including a little bit of explanation. The outer circle shows sessions by device. The inner circle is conversions by device. Big differences in composition can indicate user experience struggles. That's all they need to take away from it. If these slices are mostly matching up, great, we're good. We don't need to do anything about this and we can move on. So again, this is the kind of insight that you can bring instead of saying this is the percentage of people who are on the site via this device. I mean, you can look at it and you can kind of see what the percentages might be, but the point of that is not the actual numbers. The point of it is making sure that we're doing a good job with the website. And because we're only recording people who actually showed up in GA4, in this case, or whatever measurement tool you're using, we know that, we don't need to worry about ad blockers. It's a percentage of the overall. We know we're not capturing everybody, but the people that we are capturing, they're doing a good job at converting. And efficiency as well can help you get past those attribution gaps. So for example, let's say you are, and I'm going to use a North American example, Old Navy, or really, any large retailer. If you've ever signed up for the Old Navy mailing list, they send out 80,000 emails to every single person on their list a day. They must send out millions and millions of emails. They have one of the most aggressive email marketing programs I've ever seen. But my question would be, if I was working with Old Navy, does the number of emails that you send out correspond with your sales? Because it's not like people are going to walk into a store and hold up their phone and say, I am here because I got an email. Nobody's going to do that. They might not use the coupons you included, but they might still be spurred to purchase or not. So how many emails did you send? How many transactions did you have? There's your efficiency metric. Another one would be, let's say you did all these technical SEO changes on a website. Did you see an increase of revenue as a result? Compare those metrics because, as we all know, technical SEO changes aren't finished in one day. So here's the number of issues that you have. Here's the number of change. Here's the amount of revenue that you had. So you had, 28 SEO fixes that we did last month, and we saw the revenue increase by this much. We only did 5 this month, and the revenue didn't increase quite as much, right? Again, there's another efficiency metric that you can look at. Another question would be, did we reduce churn with our new learning series? Let's say you're working with a company, you've decided to publish a number of posts focused on teaching people how to use the product, but also generally why this client's product is better, of course, as we do in marketing. And as a result, are you seeing less churn, less people leaving the product? Then you can take that further and say users who saw these posts are less likely to churn, but that top level metric compares the work that you did, that input, with the churn rate, and that's the output. So now that I've gone through these examples, I really want you to rethink not just what you're reporting on, but how you're reporting it. I already talked about how tables, we use too many of them, we should use less, but you want to include some ideas in terms of how you design your reports and what you deliver to your client. Here's 3 numbers I want you to think about. 5.26 versus 5.3 versus 5. Fundamentally, if you know that something is converting or key eventing in GA4, which is the silliest term, I can give another talk about that. If something is converting at 5.26% versus 5.3% versus 5%, will that percentage, will that precision that we have in those decimal points truly change the decisions that we make based on this information? If not, then why are we presenting these values with 2 decimal places of precision in this land of imprecise data, right? Why are we giving this illusion of precision that doesn't actually exist? So what I would encourage you to do instead would be to use directional data in your reporting. Instead of trying to achieve that precision that frankly is just not available to us, we should be speaking in directional terms instead. So what do I mean by directional data? This points to what you need to know, what happened and where the trends are. I used to say trends, not absolutes. I've said that for years, but I think this term of directional reporting is a more accurate way of capturing this kind of data. So in terms of how to introduce the idea of directionality, I want to go over some directional questions that you're probably already asking yourself, questions that you might already answer in your reports for your clients. What landing page is doing a better job of driving signups? Is our organic search traffic increasing or decreasing? Does this video encourage people to buy our products? These are already directional questions that you've probably been asking yourself, your clients, your data, your entire marketing career, but now I want you to answer them with a directional method instead of aiming for that artificial precision that just doesn't exist. So going back to the first question, which landing page is doing a better job of driving signups? Here is a table that you might already have in your reports. You have a landing page, you have sessions, you have number of key events. If I gave you 1 second to look at this table, could you tell me which pages are doing the best job? You'd look and see, well, I see that 35 key events off of the homepage and there's 14 off of the Sunshine Coast Pest Control, and that looks good, I guess, but I don't know about those other pages because they have so many sessions. Instead, this is exactly the same data, but instead of showing the numbers of sessions and numbers of key events, I am instead showing them as a percentage of the overall amount. Again, this is in Looker Studio. For the metric, you just say, show this as a percentage of the total. And now it's really obvious where the gaps are, where we have these pages that are driving in huge amounts of sessions, but very few actual key events. And we know this about this client. These are more reference type posts, but it also means that we can find out some things like, are the pages that we really want to make sure are doing well? Are they doing well? Are some things that we can do to improve the number of key events that we get from these pages? And so here's a comparison of the two. It's much clearer and more interesting to present it as a percentage of the total, and it removes that whole, well, I saw 12 form fills and this report says 9, so your report must be wrong discussion, which I'm sure you're having with your clients. The reason why, they would see 12 form fills in their CRM and you would see 9 in your report is because of ad blockers or people saying no to cookies. You can hide from that, but you can't hide that you actually filled out a form. Right? So again, it removes that idea of precision and instead focuses on that output. Next question, is our organic search traffic increasing or decreasing? So to answer this, in the past, what I've used is what I call a rolling dashboard. This shows the weekly trends for the past year. Dark blue line is current, light blue line is past. There's some micro copy that I couldn't include on this slide, but I explain all this above for the actual client itself. And then I break it down by specific time periods, and then I compare those time periods by the previous period and then the previous year. So for example, if we look at organic search 180 days, it's looking at the last 180 days compared to the previous 180 compared to the same 180 last year. So I look at this and say organic search is down 5.4% compared to the previous period, but it is up 20% when I look at the previous year. Great. Again, but it over focuses on those actual numbers, which may or may not actually be accurate. So instead, I'm going to change this up. So the percentage changes are the focus instead. I'm going to remove the decimal point on the percentage change because again, is 24.2 versus 24 meaningful when you're thinking about an entire year of data? No, it is not. We'll still include the numbers, but now you can see they're also rounded to the nearest 100, again, to remove that illusion of accuracy. And if you want to know how to round numbers like this in Looker Studio, I'm going to be publishing a blog post on my website in kpplaybook.com next week that goes through exactly how to do this process in Looker Studio. So here's the two compared to each other. The bottom 2 rows are significantly less overwhelming, and we're removing that illusion of precision again. We're just focusing on the numbers. Are things up or down? Yes or no? Last question I'm going to go through. Is this video encouraging people to buy our products? You put the video on the site, or your client, I know this has happened to you, has said, I made a video, I'm really proud of it. Can you put it on the site? I'm sure it'll drive more conversions. Will it? Let's find out, right? How can you tell? So in GA4, I've created 2 audiences, a positive audience of people who at least started a video, and then a negative audience of people who never started a video at all. And then in the report that we would include to the client, again, another table, because we all love our tables, you might have a table that looks like this: people who watched the video and people who did not watch the video, and the number of key events that they had of each. But now, if we go back to our friends, the percentage of total, it's pretty obvious who the winner is. Actually, that video is doing a good job of bringing in more key events. Congratulations, client. You did make a good video, and I'm glad I put it on the site after all. Even though I was skeptical it was going to convert, it did actually work. And also, I just have to say, in terms of client relations, when this happens and the client is actually right, just tell them they're right. It'll really make their day. So here's both options so you can see how much clearer the second option is. Plus, remember, tables are boring. Use graphical elements to make them more interesting and to prove your point more easily. And for these examples I've shown you, yes, I'm using GA4 and Looker Studio, but you can use any tool you want. You don't have to use GA4. You don't have to use Google Tag Manager. Use the tools that make sense for your specific situation. If you are entirely based in Europe, GA4 is kind of a privacy issue right now. Matomo might be the better choice for you, and that is totally fine. I don't care what tool you use. These reporting principles that I've shown you can be applied to data really in any specific place. It doesn't have to be GA4. It doesn't have to be Google Ads. Use the tools that make sense for you. But that being said, I really want you to think about these principles when you're putting together that reporting. There's a few more things I want you to think about when you start to make these reports. And when you go back after the session, you're looking at your reports, you're like, ugh, what do I do now? First question, how will your client view the report? If they're going to look at reports on their phone, don't design for a desktop experience. Make that report mobile-sized. It's just one more thing that can annoy a client by making them pinch and zoom every time they want to see how things are going. Use the words that your client uses to describe their goals. So if your client says to you, I want to make sure my phone is ringing, then you'd better say in that report, how many times did your phone ring, not phone call conversions. Use the client's own words in the reports. And then the last thing, I want you to check, how does this client engage with the report? Whatever tool you use for reporting, make sure it has the ability to track when a client is viewing the report and how often they're viewing the report. What pages are they looking at? Where do they linger? What are they engaging with? And if you have that information, please actually look at it. I know how busy agency life can get. And sometimes you think, they're looking at the reports. I don't need to dig in here and take a look. But it's way easier to keep existing clients than to get new ones. And one of the ways you can keep existing clients is by making sure they're happy with their reports, because we sell invisible things. And reports are one of the real tangible things that you can actually look at. You can print it out, you can touch it. So you want to make sure that your client is absolutely engaging with that report as much as they should. Now, what other insights can you bring to your client? So I recently did a great webinar with Andy Crestadina where he walked through how to use ChatGPT to pull insights from GA4 and email marketing and other places as well. Again, don't have to be using GA4. This just happens to be the tool that we were talking about. It's well worth your time. It's an hour. It'll change how you bring insights to your client. I really recommend checking this out. That QR code will take you directly to that post. And of course, these slides will be available in the PDF that is being sent out to you after this. All right, thank you very much for the talk today. I hope you enjoyed this. That QR code there will take you to my link tree where I have links to this and so much more. And it was great talking to you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Major thanks to Dana. Thanks a lot for the presentation. That was great. And I will be quoting you. We sell invisible things for sure. Then reporting is a major thing for
agencies.
We know how painful it can be. So thanks a lot for sharing all of these insights with us today.
Of course.
And we are moving to the Q&A. Already have some questions in chat. First one is from Justin. How can I automate SEO reporting without missing the important details? What's your approach to set it and forget it reports? Nice one.
Yeah, the most important thing is really thinking about, take the time at the beginning of the project to think about what are the metrics that are really going to matter for this client. So we have, as I mentioned, we use mostly GA4 and Looker Studio. We have a template that has basically everything in the kitchen sink, everything we might possibly need for a client, because it's way easier in Looker Studio and probably other tools as well to delete stuff than it is to add stuff. So we start with that, and then we think about what's going to matter for this client. What are those directional metrics that I talked about? What are those efficiency metrics that we're going to need for this client? And then make sure to set up your systems as much as possible. So for example, using Zapier for automation can be really key. We have one client who has a people counter because people coming into their show homes is actually a really important metric for them. And so we automatically get an email report with the people counter results, which we then push into Zapier, which then takes the numbers and puts them in a sheet, which automatically gets pulled into Looker Studio. Take the time to set that up manually at the beginning, or it is manual work at the beginning to set it up, but once it's done, it just works. And then the client thinks it's magic, honestly. But using automation tools like Zapier can save you so much time for reports. We got better things to do with our time than copy and paste numbers from one spreadsheet to another.
Right. Exactly. Thanks a lot for the answer. Another one from Alex. Can SEO reporting help spot less obvious trends or relationships between different metrics?
Yeah, Alex, you asked this early on, so I hope that what I went through in the rest of the presentation helped answer this particular question. I think something else too that we're looking a lot at is really make sure too that the reports that you give to clients don't look at like the diagnostic type stuff that I talk about, like how many keywords were in each of these, like how many words were in each of these queries, for example, like seeing, are you targeting like high volume top level terms, which maybe, you know, especially with the advent of AI overviews aren't as efficient anymore. Should we be targeting queries that have more words in them, for example? That kind of reporting, you probably don't want to give that to a client, but that's a reporting you should have for yourself for sure. And so definitely that kind of reporting can help you spot those less obvious trends and look at that relationship between different metrics. But again, that isn't necessarily something I give to a client unless they're really into it. But even then, it's like their job isn't in SEO. This is probably not something you want to give them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for clarifying. Next one. How do you tailor your SEO reports for different audiences, like tech teams versus execs? They talk about the same things, but use different language, right?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that we do is we put out, well, we give a survey actually at the beginning that everybody has to fill out. And one of the things that I ask them is like, what are the questions that you're asking of the data right now? And knowing the answer to that question is a really good way to get their language. So as I mentioned, like use the words that that client uses. So if you're reporting to like the tech teams and the executives, they definitely use different words. So make sure to give them those surveys or have those conversations, note down what they say and how they say it, and then make sure you're using that terminology when you talk to those different teams. And it's something where you don't have to be like, look, I used your own words, like don't mention it. But invisibly, again, like there's a book called Selling the Invisible, which if you haven't read, I really do recommend it for agency services. But a lot of the things that you talk about are like those removing those invisible friction points. Like don't make them think, right? So by using the words that they use, you're already speaking their own language, you're making them comfortable, you're not making them work hard to understand the report, and it can really make a world of difference in that client relationship.
Right. That's a great piece of advice. Thanks a lot. And we have some several questions actually from Diego. I will break that into pieces because that's going to be overwhelming. But how do you balance data from various sources such as an SEO tool, GA, DSC, and yours ACRM when compiling a report?
Yeah. So again, that's where I talk about, you know, at the beginning of the project, think about what are going to be those final metrics for that client and asking them in their surveys, like, what are the top level things? What are the things you've asked of this data? Another question that I'll sometimes ask as well is there a report that actually changed your mind about what you were doing and what was that report? Because that can also help me see, you know, what kinds of reports are they already looking at to make those different decisions. So really the balance of data that you end up coming with really depends on what's going to make the most sense for that client. So there isn't necessarily a hard or fast answer that you need to make sure you're relying on this or that or whatever else it is. If you are presenting specific sources of data, though, like Google Search Console, I always make sure to include a caveat on the page itself. It's like, this data is not 100% accurate, so that clients don't get over-focused again on those inherent inaccuracies in the data.
Great. And continuing with the question, which approach do clients find most convenient? Is the approach that's convenient for clients also convenient for you?
Oh man, it depends. I mean, our default, I would say, is Looker Studio because clients do want to have a dashboard that they can like look at whenever. And some clients do look at it whenever, some clients don't. And if that's the case, again, we look at the data and we're like, you know, would you prefer to have a call once a month to go over some information? Or do you just want an email? Or, you know, and really checking in with them as well. You know, is this make the most sense for you? So for example, for some of our ads clients, because they aren't necessarily a high volume client, because they weren't really, you know, communicating on a regular basis, we might only talk to them once a quarter, but that reduces their management fees, which they're happy about. They feel like things are running, they're looking good. Obviously we're keeping an eye on stuff, but we don't need to have that level of communication because they don't feel that they need it. Whereas other clients, you know, they like to talk to us. The only way they'll actually get things done is if we have a regular call for accountability. So they prefer that kind of communication style. So again, this is going to depend on a client by client basis. It's something you need to work into your operating procedures, unfortunately. But I think, customization is the way to go here. Or you can decide, I'm only going to work with clients who want this kind of thing. That's also a totally valid way to go. And if that's the case, make sure to build relationships with other agencies who do things slightly differently than you do, so that if you do get a lead who's going to benefit more from like that, let's say you want to be low touch with your clients and you have a lead come in who wants to be high touch, send them to an agency you trust who can provide that kind of high touch relationship. And that way you look great, and that agency will also send you business back the other way.
Nice. That's a great advice. But anyway, we should be flexible here and be ready to adjust to what clients find best. So yeah, Diego is sorry for the long question, but I think we nailed it. So no worries about that. And I think the last one would be, what API tool would you recommend between Portametrics or Zapier to pull Shopify data to Looker Studio?
Yeah, that is a great question, Okusami. So I would say I'm not actually super familiar with Portametrics. It is on my list of like, these are things you could use. What I've used personally in the past is a tool called Airbyte or Stitch. Those are also two, they're called ETL tools, where they pull data out of different sources. I think the tool itself doesn't necessarily super matter. I think Zapier, though, might not be powerful enough to pull data from Shopify to, because Looker Studio itself doesn't actually store any data. So it's got to go somewhere else. So Supermetrics, for example, has a connector for, you can get right into Shopify. But what you might want to do is take Shopify data and push that into BigQuery, and that can be your storage bucket that you then pull into Looker Studio. So I would say investigate some of those other options. Ultimately, the tool you choose is going to make the most sense based on your own specific recommendations. Another tool that sort of provides a UI on top of BigQuery data is called Analytics Canvas. They also have a fantastic UA backup service. We are like a month away from losing UA data forever. So if you have not yet backed up your UA data, please use Analytics Canvas's UA backup service, or any backup service at all, really anything. I'm going to be publishing a blog post soon as well about I made a quick dashboard you can use if you just need to download a little bit of data, but like, don't lose that data forever. Definitely download it at least at a minimum. So don't leave that to the last minute, please.
Great. Nice. Thanks a lot. And I think that's a great piece of advice to wrap up our presentation. And actually, we're wrapping up the event. Thanks a lot, Dana, for being such a great speaker and sharing all of these insights with us today. That was amazing. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And just a couple of minutes before we wrap up, for sure, speaking about reporting and automation, I will mention our report builder, which is a great go-to tool if you want to customize your reports and templates and automate or set up the report so you can literally set it and forget it, or you want to structure your data wherever you want. So go for the SE Ranking Report Builder, and I'm sure that it will make your life easier with your reporting processes. And you can, of course, try it out with our free trial, along with all the other tools that are included. So just a kind of reminder for you to provide your business email, and you will have more limits, access by a QR code, and register for the free trial. Also, a kind reminder that we have an SE ranking community. I've already mentioned it. We have great discussions there, great people with like-minded people in the industry dealing with similar challenges and problems, and sharing the advice. So if you want to join us, just use the link in chat or the QR code here, and we will be very much happy to see you around. And of course, we would like to see you as one of our followers or friends in our social media. So here are the useful links. We will also be sharing all of these presentations and materials after the event. So you will see all of these here, and you will be able to join us in social media. Thanks a lot. We are going to wrap up. Agency Growth Day is coming to an end, and I want to thank you all for joining us today from different parts of the world, from different time zones. We really appreciate having you here and asking your questions, leaving comments, feedbacks, being engaged with the event. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the event. I hope you got all the valuable insight that you expected to get here to grow your agency business. And SE Ranking is always here to support you with our powerful tool set. So take care and see you at our next events.